want us to?
No, but feel free to chime in.
Oh, yeah.
Oh,
No, I had this. I think you want to. So it's not good. So it counts.
I gotta go now. Got it. He's on his way now. We just realized. So it's us.
The mayor sits up.
Mayor's there. Victor's not here.
Why do I feel like I'm in the hot seat?
We are.
I am looking like everybody's there, relaxed.
Testifying to a committee, that's all.
I'm like, oh my God.
Oh, good, you have talking points. You talk.
No, I yeah, a little bit. Oh, I talk, you know, talk.
Please, should we swear the witness in, please?
Where are all the cameras? So when you watch these people in the federal government coming to this speak, and all the cameras are coming.
so I have like well over 14 years of school committee meetings on camera, and like someone made a meme of all the different hair colors I've had and all the different lipstick colors and
That takes a lot of work.
yeah,
Maybe
that's
like AI.
perhaps, yeah. Why do you want to do that?
We're talking about pizza.
I wish I could give you.
Brookline does. Not that I'm.
What I don't wanna see is was a bad day for you, something like that.
There's probably that.
Hey, how are you? How are you?
Hi, are you sitting here?
Ellen, hi. I'm like, I did do. 100%
Are you representing?
Yeah.
Good to see you.
In the interest of time, we're going to start. We'll call to order the special meeting of the Newton School Committee on March 30th, 2026 I'll let Superintendent kick it off. Our delegation is here. Thank you for coming. Thank
Hey,
you for
hello,
coming.
everyone, and anyone watching at home. We have a lot of special guest stars here tonight. So I'll just ask that the Newton delegation just introduce themselves for the public, and then we'll dive into our agenda of, and we're just so thankful that you're here and that we actually will, as a formal matter, thank you for your support and service to our school district. But Representative Lon, would you mind kicking us off, and we'll just scoot down the line?
Nice to see everyone. My name is John Lawn, and I am the state representative for the 10th Middlesex, which includes 3 precincts in Newton, 4 in Watertown, and 6 in Waltham. So spread out a little bit over the 3 communities. And I am the House Chair of the Healthcare Finance Committee, and I have been in this role for since 2011. And I'm very proud to represent the city of Newton and work with my colleagues here, and happy to be here tonight.
Thank you.
I'm Cindy Cream. I represent all of Newton, which is great. So I represent Newton, Brookline, and Wellesley. I'm thrilled that you guys are doing that, and thanks, Ben, for contacting us. But we've done this in Brookline, we've done this in Wellesley, and I've been saying we really should do this in Newton. And it's great. We all want to work with you. We want to get to know you. I think it's great. So I'm the majority leader in the Senate, and I chair committee on the environment and natural resources. We're interested in what you want to tell us.
I'm Amy Sangiolo. I was just elected about 1.5 years ago. I represent the 11th Middlesex, which is the northern portion of Newton, minus the 3 precincts that John Lawn has. I'm not a chair of any committee, just getting my feet wet, but I'm on public safety, I'm on public health, and I'm also on consumer protection. And one more, racial justice and equity, those committees. And I've enjoyed working with you this past 1.5 years, and I look forward to continue to working with you. And en route, but in Newton traffic, is Greg Schwartz, our other hometown representative. So we'll hear from him when he comes in. So this is a tradition that I'm used to as a superintendent, of getting together with our delegation every year and having a public discussion about what matters to us most and how we want to move forward our priorities. I do want to say that everyone in this delegation had representation at the Tri-County Superintendent's Board Legislative Breakfast, which many of you also attended, and the mayor co-hosted with me. And we had a really good sit down even after that has already yielded some really important developments. But today, our legislative delegation, Ben Schlesinger and Ari Proya, there are reps to be liaisoning with you folks, and they've helped us generate this agenda today, just to talk about the state of the Newton Public School system, the challenges that we're facing, current legislation that we have been supporting, potential legislation. We want to hear from you, and just then have an open discussion about the shared values and issues before us. But first, we have to just give you many cups of our gratitude and your ongoing support. Both last year, in very difficult financial times, you came forward with earmarks for social emotional learning, professional learning for our teachers, just to name a few. And this year, we have been notified by this delegation recently that we have obtained $200,000 for special education funding. Thank you, Representative Lund, for the personal phone call last week. It was just-in-time news for us in a very difficult time. $40,000 to support our Math Pathways program, $30,000 for the preschool early intervention curriculum and literacy, and $25K for a digital writing portfolio program, all of which had to be culled out of our current budget in order to meet the expectations of our current funding. So I guess we just want to say thank you so much for these efforts, which help us to keep the Thrive mission of our strategic plan going while we're still encountering some budgetary difficulties. This past year, we put forward both a new vision and mission statement and have affirmed the community values. And it's clear to us that you have upheld those values in the ways that you're trying to support us financially and at being at these important events with us. You know about our system, but we have 11,000 students. We're the 9th biggest in the state. We have about 2,000 plus educators, 23 schools, and 26 programs. Many of our buildings are over 50 years old, 17 out of 23 to be exact, with 2 new schools coming online shortly. We have 5 internal special education sub-separate programs. 18% of our students are served in special ed, with 30% of our total student population in the high needs category. We do great things in this district. Just this week, we found out that one of our high schools is mock trial state champions. We have the highest levels of achievement in music in terms of our jazz musicians. Ligerbots, our joint North-South robotics team, is internationally known. And when you pick up our annual report, which will be available in 2 weeks, there's a whole brag sheet in it that tells all the things that we do. Tamika's been on me for a couple of years to get that out. So, and we'll send you autographed copies if you want those. I do feel, as someone who has been president of the Tri-County Soups Association for the last 4 years, that we've struggled in Newton just due to the deployment of how post-COVID relief funding was used in the city. And so what I want to say again is thank you, especially last year, for giving funding that would allow us to do some of those accelerated improvements. And I think that the villains here are the rising costs of public education and other inflationary costs, and the fact that we didn't have that short-term infusion over the past few years leaves us where we are right now, which is wanting to do the most we can for our students and supporting them at all levels of the organization and all spectrum of performance and all subgroups, but not having all the funds that we need to do it in this very tough inflationary time. You hear that from all of your cities and towns. We're not alone in that. But we want you to know that we are actually proving that those investments you helped us make last year and your direct help with earmarks last year to train our teacher leadership teams have brought us early signs of success in our student support programs K-5. We reorganized all of the way we deliver intervention and extension services to our littlest learners, and we are seeing promising signs that any student touched by those interventions that you helped train teachers for have had higher than average growth in 5 months of time in the Newton Public Schools this year. So we feel we're on a swing. Detailed here are high growth for students. This is just an example of math intervention, that 62% of students who were touched by those trained teachers who you helped us to train in intervention moved out of the urgent math category of risk. In terms of literacy, students did better than average growth, which is measured by national benchmarking standards, if they had 6 weeks of intervention with our trained teachers. So we feel like we know what to do. It's just, can we do it with the current funds available to us? Our early detection systems in dyslexia and literacy disability screenings showed that students in our district reduced their early warning signs by 45% from September to January in our district based on the new reading and intervention programs and the strength of our teachers. So this is a district worth investing in. And as we have said over the last few years, many of our investments have been less than our peers for a variety of reasons. And we're looking forward now, and it helps us to deal with the impacts of COVID, a difficult teacher strike for the community, and long-standing underfunding compared to peers in the overall budget. Today, though, our new mayor has increased our funding by a significant and historic amount. but cuts still remain. The man does not have a money tree, as he has said over and over. And to that end, you know, like all other districts, we are in the process of delivering cuts to help redeploy some resources within the organization and some to just eliminate positions or systems or products that we are currently using. So with a $17 million increase, 12 million goes to salaries, 4.4 million to healthcare, which really leaves only $700,000 to deal with all the inflationary factors in front of us. So that's the problem that we face. And let's see. I also just want to say certain things like the monopolistic market on busing, which I'm sure you've heard about. And I actually admire the new Inspector General's work in auditing this recently. The special education out-of-district reimbursement rates, we are just over a barrel with these very high costs that districts have no choice but to pay the fees. We also have had new developments in terms of placement of METCO students and special education and state mandates like our bell-to-bell ban, which we like, but comes with none of the funding necessary to implement it. Reading program legislation may turn out in the same way, although I think our current program is aligned with what's being proposed at the state level. You already know this. We've discussed it at our legislative breakfast, but for the edification of the public, there are state level options that could support us. Bills in special education in circuit breaker reform, which would increase reimbursement from 75%, which is what we currently contend with, to 90%, would lower our per student cost threshold to trigger aid sooner. That would help a district like Newton tremendously. Chapter 70, a complicated formula which all cities and towns are funded by, has a revision before the state to say that we would maintain a $150 per pupil reimbursement in FY27, which would allow districts to true up the cost related to inflation over the past few years. And then finally, supporting the Healy-Driscoll framework for graduation requirements. We like requirements that allow us to know what we're expected to do, but we also need clarity on those things because we are in a change status in the district and we don't want to push our teachers in one direction only to have them pulled back in another with no money for their professional development and execution of those standards. Thank you again for the earmarks that you have secured already for us. And I know you requested even more, so we'd love to hear the status of those requests. And if we could ask you to consider ideas about regulation of tuition for out-of-district placements, to fully fund out-of-district transportation expenses. That's been on a sliding scale over time, and it makes it impossible for us to plan. Provide funding for the bell-to-bell device ban enforcement, and flexibility for cost-neutral implementations. Newton was way out in front on this and had its own ban. But with our open campus high schools, there will be some sort of cost that we will have to deploy to ensure that students do not have cell phones while on site. And that will be probably a personnel cost in terms of checking and monitoring. Ensuring that METCO remains an open seat program and not treated as a school choice program within this system would also be helpful to us as we move forward in state programming. So with that, we would love to hear from you on your thoughts and ideas that you have and ways that we can be collaborative in solving all of the state's problems. Thanks. Who wants to go first? You want to go?
I'll go, sure.
Oh, did you want me to? Do you want me to? I don't.
Whatever you would like to do.
We'll go this way.
Sure.
In order, alphabetically.
Well, thank you. First of all, I would just like to say we're very lucky in the fair share amendment with, as I said to you in the phone call, with Amy and Greg's support to secure $200,000 in special education funding. And then Amy and Greg also were able to secure some more monies. But I think this is, and we're very fortunate to have the majority leader in the Senate with us as one of our leaders here, who has obviously a lot of influence in the Senate as we're going into them doing the budget. We'll be doing our budget last week of April. So this is a very timely meeting for us to come and talk with you about priorities. And and what we can do also for more funding in the state budget. So that was just for the fair share amendment budget that we were able to secure some money. But I certainly understand, and we're seeing in the paper today, well, elections in all these other communities, everyone's really facing these challenges. And Newton certainly is such a big city that people think can have a very different understanding on how the challenges that are in this city and how it's spread out in so many schools and the complex issues that you're dealing with. And I think just in talking with the mayor the other day about some of the funding, just us hearing from you going to the budget cycle, what we can do to be more helpful, certainly getting every dollar we can, but I think we have a very good team. I'm interested a little bit to hear about, I know the Senate's taking up the cell phone. I've heard a lot of different school systems throughout my district and outside, a lot of my friends in education, principals of other schools, just wanting to having some flexibility to do a program that works for them without, letting every city and town have that flexibility. I know in Watertown, for example, we have the principal and, they have a very different system and they don't want a bell to bell in the high school. Where they've got a new app that would shut a phone down when people go into a classroom. But certainly I think that's going to be coming up in the House and certainly want to hear your perspective on that. And then just obviously just communicate with you all about as we go into the House budget at the end of April of what those real priorities and what we can really do to be helpful.
Thank you.
So as I said, I'm really thrilled that we're doing this. And if we will be taking up the fair share bill as well. And so if there are other, we also have an opportunity to put something into the budget different. And what's good about putting different, I'm not going to put the same things in that my colleagues put in. We don't do that because then when there's a conference committee, you get what they put in and what we put in. So if there are other particular things, I have 3 towns, but I was interested in after school programs and things like that. But if there are things that you are into, whatever amount that would be helpful, please get that to us because we are going to be taking up the fair share within a couple of weeks. And we have in the past talked to you and put in things that you had suggested we do. And so
I think that's a great tradition. Let's keep that going.
let's keep it going. With respect to the cell phones, even the bill, well, the Senate passes a bill, the House passes a bill, there's a conference committee. The policy of regulating the cell phones was something that superintendents wanted. Everybody felt was in the best interest of the students. But there are exceptions, and we had that in also accommodations for students with disabilities, emergencies, if they're not going to be in the school. It may be that what you are thinking might fit into one of those exceptions. But I assume that the House might do a different bill, and that then it would be a great opportunity to be able to pick and choose. Whether there will be funding for the additional funding for that, I don't know. I'm always worried about there being mandates unfunded. These are extraordinary times. I have to say that in all the time I've been in office, I've not experienced as much anxiety from my constituents for every reason. Anxiety about the world and anxiety about immigrants, anxiety about money. We potentially could have another big loss of health money for health insurance if 200,000 more people fall off. And I defer to my colleague to the right who deals with us all the time. But we worry that if that happens, that means that we're all in a cutback. I want to give a plug for voting no on a particular matter. You're going to be asked to vote on whether you want to reduce the rate of taxes. If that passes and people vote to reduce the tax rate, I don't know what we'll be coming here offering. It is going to be really, really difficult. And I know, people are hurting and it sounds good, let's reduce the tax rate. But we barely can keep you all happy with the things that you need. And I don't see any way that we can do that if the tax rate. So I'm hoping that that ballot initiative does not pass. I'm putting that plug in. And I think that those of us that rely on state funding have to think about that. So I think with respect to that, the bill about cell phones, I think we're all interested in making it work for everyone. The Senate did a bill on book banning, which I thought was interesting, and hope that you might take a look at that, prohibiting the banning of books and giving this public school libraries an opportunity and the local schools to determine what books are banned. Maybe it doesn't matter here. Maybe we're just really lucky where we live that they don't ban books. I was particularly sensitive about the book banning bill. My son-in-law wrote a book for young adolescents, The Berlin Boxer, and it's about a young boy during the war, the Second World War, who's Jewish and is being bullied. And he goes to learn wrestling from Max Schmeling, who was a well-known wrestler. I didn't know him, but Bob did. It's a wonderful book. It's won all kinds of awards. And then he was notified that in 2 states, the book was banned in the public schools. And he thought, well, maybe it was part of what was going on with anti-Semitism. Well, it had nothing to do with that. There is an incidental character, a very minor character in the book that's a transgender character. And the book was banned as a result of that. Now, that's not going to happen in Newton, Brookline, and Wellesley. But I still fear there are other parts in the state that something like that could happen. It's much different, as we know, working with our colleagues, their meetings, there's the way that people in their communities look at things like this. So I think it's a good bill, and maybe take a look at that and see that it's something that you might feel good about. I don't know if the House is going to take it up, but they might, and that would be something that I think would be interesting. With respect to Chapter 70, I fear that there are a lot of people that want to change the method of funding for Chapter 70 and give a lot more money to those communities that don't generate money through taxes, but depend on the state for their funding for schools. I don't know if that change would be very helpful to my communities. That's something to pay attention to. There are certainly changes that I could see to Chapter 70, but I fear that that change will not result in more money, but might result in less money to Newton. Hi, Greg. That change in Chapter 70 would result in less money to the communities like Newton, Brookline, and Wellesley. And so I know the superintendent's probably thinking about that, but that is something I'm concerned about. I have in the past been filing a bill which would require insurers to cover the costs of medically necessary treatments by a student's IEP. This is left to the school district, and that would be very helpful if they would cover those expenses. That and the bills on social emotional learning and in sports and also in the classroom are things that I'm hoping would pass. But I do think that that would be something that would be helpful here. I'm interested in hearing more that you have to say. I'm happy to talk about other bills that we have, but that's, for now, I think that's where we are.
So Greg, we're just sort of responding to some of the issues that they want to us to work on. So I just wanted to say that I can't really top anything that Cindy has said, but I just wanted to respond to the bell to bell because I think there were like 4 or 5 bills that were filed in the House, and the Joint Committee on Education bundled them up and redrafted it. So there's a redraft of those ideas that was sent to House Ways and Means, and I think that's where it stands now. My understanding is that the bill is looking at DESE to come up with a sort of a policy that will be sort of model that would give communities sort of that flexibility on how they want to handle that, whether it's some kind of app that would that Representative Lon was mentioning, or some other method of doing it. I am cognizant of the concern about having these unfunded mandates, so I'm sure that that will come up as we move forward with that. In terms of the busing, I think that's something that definitely is on my radar. I'm very concerned because we are beholden to 2 companies that control all of the transportation in the state. I happen to be somebody who is very interested in moving towards electrifying our buses. And I did file a bill to sort of make it easier for that to happen. I don't know where that bill is right now, but that's what I hope we can get to reduce our reliance on fossil fuel transportation. Trying to think. I'll have to take a look at the Metco suggestion. I did not realize that it's now being used like an open seat kind of program. So that's the first time I've heard of that. So you're saying that
that's its
not,
history. Yes.
you're saying that it's now become a choice as opposed to open seat?
We're worried that it may.
Okay. So I'll reach out to folks about that,
Mhm.
who are working on that. Like Cindy, I filed legislation on social emotional learning in sports. I think she's right in terms of voting no on that tax ballot question. There was a hearing today that I was on. They were talking about what the impact would be on the Commonwealth, and it would just devastate our budget. So I agree with her in terms of trying to convince folks that that is a very important ballot question and they should pay attention to it. And then the other thing that I wanted to agree with Cindy on was the changes to Chapter 70. I hear my colleagues all over the state who want the changes made, and I feel for their communities because they are not getting the kind of funding that they need. But I do think that you also have to know and be prepared that if those changes go through, it will likely hurt Newton. Thank you. Oh, and I also want to say that we should have more of these, and you should give us more ideas on what you particularly want, particularly with budget asks, because I mean, that was emailing you, Anna, and Alicia, and saying, what do you need with 4 hours, right? So I think it's really important to have that list ready for us to move on.
Thank you so much for having this. My apologies. My calendar said it was 6:30, so I was actually running half an hour early, but unfortunately I was half an hour late. So I didn't get a chance to hear your presentation. I gleaned from part of Cindy and Amy's responses that a couple of the issues include what I would expect, which would be school funding.
It's sort of similar to what we discussed at the legislative event a couple
Yeah,
weeks ago.
with the superintendents. That's great. I mean, and again, I'm probably going to repeat what my colleagues on the Hill have already told you, but the Chapter 70 and Student Opportunity Act funds, last year we were very happy to see the minimal aid communities get the 150 per pupil. You know, in Newton, that comes out to, I think, a little bit less than $1 billion. So that's obviously very important for us to get in the budget again this year. And I know that there's been support for that. The governor did come in, though, with a $75 per pupil request. So that's always an issue for us to try to backfill that. Secondly, I do feel that, you know, with the bill that Amy was referring to about electric school buses, you know, that's a long-term kind of potential but we'd like to be moving in that direction at the very least, and openness on one issue that might be important to that bill is the way it's structured. There might be some benefits to the communities that that house the buses. So it'll be important for us to think about that as you make your plans long term about, I know that there's currently discussions about putting the buses in, finding a place for the buses. So, you know, outside of those, the bell-to-bell ban, I know is still working its way through our House side processes. Certainly open to the input of the superintendent and this committee, because we don't want to, I think my understanding from looking at the issue in Newton is that it's been working pretty well how we're managing it in our schools. And so to add a state level mandate that puts extra cost potential requirements on the system is something that we want to try to avoid as much as we can. Yeah, I mean, again, I apologize for not having heard more detail of your concerns. I would just add, and it might have already been mentioned, but another piece of that may at some point just at least touch this committee is the recommendations of the Special Commission on Combating Anti-Semitism. As you know, they had numerous suggestions for teaching in the schools a little bit more about the Jewish experience in America and in general history, not just about you know, Holocaust teaching. And I think that that's really going to be very helpful in addressing what we're seeing nation and statewide as far as increased anti-Semitism and trying to address and increase understanding at the middle and high school levels. So I know that there's going to be a lot of DESE involvement in that, and they're committed to trying to work with the school systems on implementing that in a reasonable way and in a way that does not make anybody feel that there's you know, uncomfortable.
I appreciate you bringing that up, Representative Schwartz, because we do hear a fair amount of interest in where are we with that. And so because we are in a curriculum review cycle for all of our curriculum areas right now, we are waiting for some guidance from DESE about their specific pieces so that we don't have to double deploy new units and new expectations. So I appreciate you raising that. So I think it's open discussion time, so I'll let you take back the.
Start with Tamika.
Thanks, Alicia. I also want to thank all of you, Rep. Lon, Senator Cream, Rep. Sangiola, Rep. Schwartz, for being here and your willingness to do this with Newton Public Schools. I have been a member for 6 years, and it is the first of my knowledge that we've had this type of engagement. And I think it's wonderful. And I agree that we need to have these conversations more frequently. If you consider the 2020 and George Floyd, Breonna Taylor conversations and protests as the high water mark in terms of many districts, many states, including Massachusetts, commitment to diversity, equity, and inclusion, and you contrast that with where we stand today with this federal administration's animus, open animus to those very things, how do you see the Commonwealth of Massachusetts being an effective partner to districts, many of whom, like Newton, are struggling to preserve their commitments to DEI through financial constraints? How is the state partnering with districts and making these things more feasible, in your opinions?
I'll jump in that I'm not sure that they're just particularly doing that, but the state has taken a position that we're not going to back down from any of our policies, civil rights, or any of them that we've had in the past. I see that falling apart because of the money issue. And when we do the diversity money, funding isn't coming. I know the state has been trying to keep whatever great programs like that we had. We just lost, there's a lot of funding being lost in medical care for transgender care, and we're finding a way to get that money. My colleague knows more, but but so that that will still continue. I was the first person to file a bill to make chokeholds a crime. And I know that in Massachusetts, in the Senate, we still have special programs available if we hire students or hire somebody has diversity. I worry myself about that. And I don't know that there's an exact program, but I know that we've been told and we've always been trying to keep the same sentiments of programs that we've had in the past.
Well, say that, I think the state is, and Massachusetts in general has stood by, all of these diversity programs are not backing away at all. I see in some of the healthcare issues that have come from federal money with the threats to, as the senator just explained, some of our community health centers that do a lot of transgender affirming care, that the federal government has threatened to stop, say, the 340B drug program that funds so much of that certain community health care budget that they had to, we've been working with them to find alternative ways to provide that care outside of that, so they would not lose, for this one community health center was $40 million in funding, which would then lose them the ability for them to care for so many others. So I think we're working, especially in healthcare, to try to work our way around setting up certain funds to be able to still carry those programs out under a different program outside of the federal government's purview. So I think we'll continue to do that any way we can to preserve, especially healthcare and anything else to protect our citizens.
I just want to say, I sit on the Racial Justice and Equity Committee, and we've had different sectors come in to talk about what the impact has been on those sectors by what the federal government is doing in terms of destroying and dismantling all of our DEI programs. If there's some issue here in Newton that you are aware of funding that's being cut or programs that need that are in jeopardy, I would ask that you share that with us, because that's something that we will definitely bring back. As both of my colleagues have said, the state is committed to not allowing the federal government to dismantle our commitment to DEI and inclusion. So I think the best way for us to respond is to know how it directly is impacting your programs and loss of funding.
I very much appreciate you saying that, and I think that's a little bit more of a substantive conversation. With that, I will yield back and let others ask their questions as well. But thank you very much. Appreciate it.
Well, and also keeping the MEDCO program is very important, and keeping it, the communities I represent, Brookline, Newton, and Wellesley, probably 3/4 of the MEDCO. It's a huge thing in my communities. And I'm proud that my communities want to continue that program. And I'd like to hear maybe if the superintendent has some ideas on how we advocate to keep that program the same it is. I see the impossibleness, I don't know if that's a word, of being able to continue with the program if you have a student with a disability and you have no place for them and no seat, no opening, and you don't know till the last minute how that is going to be, how that's going to work, or whether you can just send them to a different community that has an opening for them. Mm-hmm. So I admit that I heard about it, but that we looked into it when you brought it up as an issue. Mm-hmm. That's a good thing about these meetings. I'd heard peripherally about it, but mm-hmm. we made some phone calls because that's been an important thing for me mm-hmm. for when my kids were in school. Yeah. So that's I just mentioned that if there's something we can do.
Yeah, the threat is real, and we need to make sure that districts, committees like this are faced with some impossible choices around special education funding and what we have to do for Newton residents and what we want to do for METCO students, and the funding doesn't follow. And if there are changes in the way that's administered to force districts to create programs they don't have, that would be an impossibility. That would be a death knell for the METCO program.
Can I just ask, so Tamika, I know that you were referring to, I think, in education per se, DEI, because I think we got a little bit off from education. I would just have a question, and certainly, like Amy was saying, we'd love to know what you're facing in that regard. If the public school system is facing a loss of the kind of funding that supports DEI programming and staffing, we need to hear about that so that we can see if there's a way to address that. So just to get back to the substance of that, when, after this meeting, we could talk.
Good.
Thank you.
Jonathan and then Jason.
Thank you for being here. I really appreciate it. I'm Jonathan Green. I'm the representative for Ward 6 here in Newton. I live in Newton Center. I had a chance to meet some of you on the campaign trail, but others not yet. Maybe two questions on my end. I think the first is I'd love to understand a little bit more about how you envision the electric school bus plan working. Like, what is it that the state is hoping, or that, as legislators and as the state, we're hoping to put together to make that happen? And how do we imagine that happening? I think that's the first thing I want to talk about. And then the second was, I think we addressed everything that was on the superintendent's wish list, with the exception of the cap on, or some protection on, out of district schools funding. And so I just wanted to candidly bring that back up and see if that was something we needed to reiterate on as we think about what would be potentially most valuable to the school system. So thank you.
I want to say something about the electric bus.
Please.
Brookline has an electric bus. I also have filed legislation on electric buses. I don't think those two companies, I don't know if they have, and we can't make them have it.
Right.
So if we required you to send students on electric buses and there weren't any, I don't know whether that's something that is something Newton would even think about. But it is something that time to go?
No. Just getting started.
I do know, and I don't know how it worked there, but Brookline has an electric bus, and that may be something, there may not be funding, or may be something that we could, I don't know what it would cost to do it and how it would work, maybe in after-school programs. Maybe that's something we can think about in helping the funding. But I certainly.
I'm mostly most fearful of another unfunded mandate. That's what I'm actually picking at.
I don't
Yeah.
think, I think we don't intend it to be I also have an electric bus. It's just that if we could get communities to have electric buses and electric, everything here, we would.
So just for the
Change in the feeling about environment, I don't know what to say.
Well, just for the public's understanding, when we go out to bid for busing, we put the desire for electric buses in it. If there are no bids that are responsive to it, we are obligated to take the lowest bid that is responsive to our request in the most responsive. So the reason we use the term monopolistic in our description is that Newton has had one bidder for the last couple of rounds of that bidding process, and electric buses are not on that fleet. So I just want to say, for a group like us where we do not own our buses, to start owning a fleet means that we need a garage and mechanics, and there are additions that we aren't prepared to make right now, and we don't have a company that will work with us to do it. So when we go back out to bid next year, we will again affirm that desire, and we will do whatever it takes if a vendor is willing to do that. Now, the good news is, with a new inspector general who just conducted an audit of this very scenario statewide, I am hearing from my superintendent colleagues that they're suddenly getting multiple responsive bids, and there's some actual competition in the marketplace. So my hope is that, and this is a call to all people who might apply for our bus bid, we are looking for the greenest type of fleet possible, and that we look forward to responsive bids in that way. So I know you can't do anything about that. They can't make people bid for us, but.
I'd be interested, not now, but at some point, what the difference in the price would be for contracting with a company that has gas.
Right.
driven.
Except that we're not allowed to choose anything but the lowest responsive bid. So I just want to say, like, even if we wanted to pay more for that service, the procurement laws of Massachusetts do not allow us to do that.
Right. So I just want to get back to just very quickly, the bill that I filed does not mandate school districts have to go and have electric school buses. What it does is try to change the way they are assessed. Because one of the reasons why so many companies don't go and buy it is because they're assessed higher than a fossil fuel bus. So I worked with former Newton resident, Greg and I both worked with them. And so we have legislation that I think is moving forward to try to take a look at that assessment, to try to incentivize more companies to go and be able to, procure these buses. Now, I also understand that you guys have a sustainability director who was able to procure $1 million by partnering with Lexington to get money for electric school buses. And that $1 million is sitting there. So I would recommend that there could be an opportunity to maybe try to get a pilot program with maybe the 2 high schools, or maybe for an after-school program to utilize that money. Because if you don't utilize that money, I can guarantee that Lexington will. So here's an opportunity for you to pilot a program. The director was able to get that $1 million, and that certainly I was very surprised to learn that, and very grateful as well. So I just throw that out to you.
And just to explain a little bit more, when we talk about assessment, we're talking about like excise tax. So because the price of these electric school buses is so much higher and so marked up from just a regular diesel bus, the thinking is that if you still tax them at the same price as the diesel bus, then you take away that disincentive for the both procurement and as well as the management. So, and then the idea of it is that those excise taxes can be kind of, that reduction in cost can be seen in the contract. So, but that there might be some issue around where you garage them. So that was what I was getting at before.
Thank you. That's helpful.
Jason, and we are coming to the end of our time, so this might be a last question.
I'll be brief. Jason Bardwaj, school committee member, Ward 3. It's very nice to meet and see you all. Thank you for coming. Thanks for the financial support. You don't have to ask us twice to advocate for more, so we'll be back. That's easy. But sincerely, really appreciate that. And also thanks to Ben and Ari for coordinating this, and for our chair for prioritizing this. I think it's great, so we'd love also to continue doing it. Comment and a question. The comment is on the bell-to-bell ban. I'm new to learning about how our school district, as Anna articulated, has been doing bell-to-bell bans all the way K through 8. It gets tricky. The kids are clever. And so just having sat there and put my hands on, literally you all may be aware, so I'm sorry if I'm being basic, but the physical pouch that locks with the magnet, that every student has to walk in the door every day and be greeted one by one each day by an administrator or someone else to lock. It's a complicated process. And it gets, as far as I can tell, much more complicated at the high school level, which is not to pass judgment on what's the right way to structure this, but I really do applaud the comments you made about trying to understand the complexities of those. Just again, amplifying what we heard, we have open campuses. So to do that at the high school level with a bunch of open doors, it's a leaky system. So you'd have to really change the culture of the schools in a way that I think would be pretty detrimental based on what we've heard. And it's the tools available to students who, would like access to their phones. We know this. I mean, they're putting their phones in these cubbies at the beginning of class and then mirroring them on their computers. There's workarounds. So it's not a simple, and what we don't want to do is have something that's too simple that puts a lot of onus on the teachers. We hear that a lot as well. So I really applaud the efforts to get to that level of detail. I think it's really important, and it will otherwise end up in unfunded activity. My question, or just advocacy, or a next step similar to Jonathan's in a different area, was Senator Cream, I heard you say something around after-school programs, and another one that's I've heard come up recently in that same category is summer enrichment. And I just want to highlight a particular area of focus recently around math pathways, which is, a way, what we need to make this not be sort of students caught in tracks is actually a flexible system for acceleration and support. Some of that's happening in the schools, and that's what's before the committee on our agenda today, actually. But a really, I think, exciting component of that is how those supports and extensions are available after school and during the summertime. And so if there are, things underway that we can work into to get financial support for some of those programs that would really flow directly into work we're doing right now, that would be exciting.
Well, timely. All right. Thank you. Thank you. We owe you some follow-up. I think
Thank you.
specifically two things that came up just now were our sustainability department and our DEI department are both facing cuts right now. So we will follow up with you on anything else that you might be able to help us out with. Don't worry. And I think we're out of time. I'm sorry. I promised Senator Cream's folks that we would be on time. So we will, yes, we'll follow up. Thank you so much. We really, really, really appreciate it. Thank you.
Thank you.
Invite us again. We'll come.
We will.
Done.
Okay, we adjourn this meeting of the school committee and we will start another one in a minute.
And I just want to say, because we've done it in Brookline, and if you have ideas for legislation on things as we go into the next term, when we start, we're happy that you could work with our office and we could, happy to file something.
Perfect.
your patience. Thank you, everyone.
Hello, everyone.
Are you louder or is your mic louder?
Teacher voice.
Yeah, really.
It's my teacher voice.
Thank you for your patience while we finished up that meeting with our legislative delegation. We will call to order this March 30th, 2026 meeting of the Newton School Committee. We do not have a fifth grader with us tonight, which I will say I really wanted to be here. So we will do the pledge ourselves. If you would like to participate, you may. There is no obligation. Stand.
To the flag of the United States of America, and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
So we will start with public comment this evening. And once again, we have, I think, close to 30 folks in the room and then 2 folks remotely to comment. And we usually reserve about 30 minutes for this, but like we did at last week's meeting, we'll open it up and allow everyone their full 3 minutes and time to speak. So we want to hear from all of you. You will, at the 2.5 minute mark, if Jason is on it, be given a gentle warning that you have 30 seconds. At the 3 minute mark, I will tell you that your time is up. And I ask that everyone try to wrap it up right then so that we can get through the many, many commenters we have. We will not respond directly during the meeting. We do welcome you to reach out. We have heard from many of you, I assume, in the room, and many others who are not with us tonight. So thank you for that. And if you begin, we'll start with the in-person folks. Come up, speak directly into the microphone. Please state your name and your address. And we will start with Jane France, followed by Laura Telvim and Michelle. Great, thank you.
Good evening. Good evening. My name is Jane Franz and I live at 12 Glastonbury Oval. In addition to being a retired Newton teacher, oh, I'm sorry, is the mic not on? Got it. How's that?
Perfect.
Okay, great. My name is Jane Franz and I live at 12 Glastonbury Oval. In addition to being a retired Newton teacher at 3 levels, my 3 sons are graduates of the school system. I'm here to urge you to retain the coordinator of secondary SEL and mental health administration position. The mental health crisis among students of all ages has been noted repeatedly for over 5 years. The crisis is real and it is serious. As children enter adolescence, too often their emotional and mental health issues go quiet, almost underground. My sons talked my ear off as children until suddenly they didn't. To this day, I remember how unnerving it was to see their sullen faces, the silent dinners, not knowing when to be concerned or when to take action. In addition to the quiet crises, secondary schools have seen an increase in disruptive and violent behavior. Parents, as I did, often turn to a counselor or a social worker as an initial contact. But given the dramatic increase in complexity of mental health needs in this day and age, a team approach with an administrator who sets up protocols and has consistent contact with building-based staff across all middle and high schools is essential. In fact, this approach has been in place and team members have expressed strong support for it. Without someone at the helm, the consistency in approach and practice in 6 different schools with 6 different sets of educators, counselors, social workers to handle student emotional needs will fall apart. The most forward-thinking solution involves a team approach led by an administrator with in-depth knowledge of community and school mental health systems and contacts with professionals across varying areas of expertise. With the continuation of this structure in place, students in need of mental health support
You have 30 seconds.
will receive consistent services no matter what school they attend. I urge you to retain this position, which is widely regarded as very effective. Thank you very much for your time and attention. Thank you, Tina.
Laura Talvin, followed by Michelle Fanasteel.
Hi, I'm Laura Tovim. I live at 61 Islington Road. When I heard about the proposed budget cuts a couple weeks ago, I immediately reached out to you guys to advocate for the Director of Diversity, Equity, and Inclusion. This is a critical role that is already under-resourced for a community as large and complex as ours. This role has been attacked and defended repeatedly in the past few years and is crucial to ensuring that students feel safe and valued, critical prerequisites for academic success. After listening to public comment at last week's meeting, I decided to revisit my ask. Once again, a climate of scarcity has come to define our budget discussions. The result is groups with different needs and priorities advocating for the services and programs that are most critical to their own children. While understandable, this leads to a zero-sum mentality that pits us against each other. This type of thinking is a fallacy. A gain for one group is not a loss for another, and the loss of any of the proposed positions is a loss for us all. Many of us moved to Newton for the promise of an excellent academic experience, but it is simply not possible to protect core subjects while stripping away the supports that create the conditions for learning. The DEI director, sustainability director, ABA director, and other SEL positions are not extras for specific populations. They are this essential infrastructure that keeps this entire system healthy for everyone. Our budget is a reflection of our values. I want my children to see that supporting the needs of individuals, especially those most in need, make our entire community stronger by ensuring our classrooms are stable environments where children and teachers have all that they need to succeed. We must work towards a budget that reflects the interconnectedness of these roles. They are the foundation of a functional, modern education system that prepares our students to become thoughtful, engaged, successful adults, ready to live, work, and thrive in our complex, beautiful, and challenging world. Making long-term decisions for short-term expediency invites further pain down the road. I urge you to dig deep, find a way to fund the superintendent's level services budget, and commit to a long-term strategy that funds the schools at the robust level our children and teachers deserve. Thank you.
After Michelle will be Angela Brooks and then Phoebe Cushman. Hi, my name is Michelle Fanensteel, 367 Lowell Ave. I am a veteran and a Newton parent, and I come tonight because the cuts discussed in the budget work based on the request from the mayor's office go to the heart of who we are as a community and who we want to be. Newton Public Schools face a $2.7 million gap, and not because of bad decisions, y'all, but because inflation, health insurance, utilities, and special education costs outpaced the allocation. To close that gap, our great superintendent has been asked for a plan, but this plan cuts the people who make Newton Public Schools a reflection of the best of who we are here in Newton. 4 positions, 4 values that we tell our kids matter. ABA supervisor, Dr. James Ellis, oversees services for our most vulnerable students. That's my kids. His work keeps kids in district, saving us millions. Cut this role, we pay more in both dollars and harm to children like mine. Mental health coordinator, Sophia Brian Meisles, supports 6,000 middle school and high school students. At Oak Hill alone, students reported self-harm tripled. I am the mother of a child who self-harms. We just built this system. We cannot dismantle it now, and we cannot tell our vulnerable kids that their mental health only matters when we can afford it. DEI Director Kathy Lopes, cutting to halftime does not have this work. And make no mistake, DEI delivers results to our community. Inclusive teams make better decisions 87% of the time. Organizations with diverse leadership post 19% higher revenues. McKinsey found diversity lifts profitability between 20 and 36%. Now, I am not saying we are a business. We should not run ourselves like a business, please. But these are not soft numbers. And this is work that we clearly need to do based on the stories my children tell coming out of North.
In schools, DEI works to close achievement gaps, expand STEM access for girls and students of color, and ensures every child is seen and treated fairly. Cutting this role tells our students of color, our trans students, our families who have fought to be seen, and families like mine that our support was conditional. Sustainability Director Stephanie Gilman has secured over $1 million in grants, and our kids are watching us. Cutting this tells them their future is not our priority.
I'm afraid your time
Maybe
is
we
up.
should tell them to find a different planet.
Thank you. I would like to remind the group, if you clap while someone is speaking, it not only cuts into their time, but it makes us a little bit hard to hear for us. So the last speaker was good at projecting, but for others, if you could hold the applause, that would be great. So after Angela, we'll have Phoebe. Thank you.
Hi, Angela Brooks. I am at 5 Marshall Street, Ward 6. I'm here to advocate before all of you for fully funding the superintendent's proposed budget for FY27. The at-risk positions go to the core of what our district purports to value. Cutting mental health, sustainability, special ed, and DEI leadership positions would send a signal to the community that when times are tough, we're not willing to fight to uphold the values they represent. At a moment when things in the country feel so bad, we're looking to you to keep our corner of the world in check. I specifically want to speak to the DEI director position. In conversations over the last couple weeks, I've heard that it would be okay to dismantle the DEI office because 1, other people are doing or can do the work, and 2, the office is ineffective and doesn't address the full range of DEI issues we face as a district. These arguments rattle me. Saying that we have good people who are doing the work gives me some but little comfort. I have no doubt that there are people in the district who care deeply about equity and embed it in their work. However, it should not and cannot be their responsibility to bring a district-wide lens beyond the scope of their position to ensure that day in and day out we are meeting DEI goals and living up to our values. On an issue that too often gets sidelines when the going gets tough, case in point here perhaps, it is also all the more important to have someone leading us and holding us accountable. On the point of ineffectiveness, I've heard from a diverse range of community members, staff, and parents alike who have drawn real, measurable value from the office's work, whether it be professional development on racial identity and cultural responsiveness, greatly increased numbers of staff of color, or the more intangible but still quite important reassuring conversations with families of color trying to decide whether this is a district for them. If you believe the DEI office needs to do more or do its work differently, how is the answer to cut it? We ask you to use your power to improve it instead. Otherwise, the message is that it's just not important enough to fight for. The folks who you've been hearing from are looking to you for leadership. Many of you campaigned on supporting the superintendent's vision for the schools. We're here asking you to stay true to those promises. Thank you for the opportunity.
After Phoebe Cushman, we have Irene Margolin Katz.
Hi, my name is Phoebe Cushman. I live at 40 Caroline Park. I'm presenting as a member of Green Newton's Green School Connections Committee, asking you to maintain the role of Director of Planning, Project Management, and Sustainability in Newton Public Schools, currently held by Stephanie Gilman. I am here today in solidarity with multiple other groups who presented last Monday night and again tonight about the proposed budget cuts. Together, we represent the shared values of our community, and we are asking you to fully fund the Newton Public Schools. I live in Waban, and I have 2 8th graders at Brown who will be attending Newton South in the fall. I became involved in Green Newton about 2 years ago when I offered to help through my PTO, the Green Team captains, who are 2 teachers at Brown, initiate a system for food waste diversion in the cafeteria. As I explored the problem, I realized that despite the City of Newton's robust and very visible initiatives in sustainability, the Newton Public Schools operate almost entirely independent from the City of Newton, and as such, do not participate in the same goals. Further, I discovered that the problem is not that the Newton Public Schools do not share the same values of protecting our climate. To the contrary, the students, teachers, custodians, principals, and parents I have spoken to strongly believe that we should be championing sustainability in the schools. Instead, the problem is operational. Namely, we do not have centralized staff in the school system who can lead these efforts. The single person who is hired as only one small part of her position to direct these activities is Stephanie Gilman. In her role, she's already started to move mountains, from obtaining grants to fund electric school buses to helping individual students create an elaborate share table system, which simultaneously reduces food waste and decreases food insecurity among our students. And before I wrap up, I want to note that even if we don't focus on the value of sustainability held so dearly by the people of Newton and definitely by our students, if we focus purely on the economics, making decisions that cut sustainability are not in favor of our bottom line, which is what we're here talking about today. An example of this is that we spend about $130,000 every year on compostable food boats for our children's lunches, which are, I would say, represent this problem in that it is kind of a half plan. We don't have compost.
You have 30 seconds.
And so these very expensive, much more expensive than cardboard or plastic food trays, are stuck in the trash. And if we had a system by which we could actually compost them, that would make a lot more economic sense. Thank you for continuing Ms. Gilman's position so that we can bring the school system up to the same high sustainability standards that the city of Newton has already set.
Thank you. After Irene, we have Josh Krefetz and Nurit Friedlander.
Hi, can you hear me? Okay, great. Dear members of the school committee, my name is Irene Margolin-Katz, 19 Rolling Lane. I have a junior in the Stride program at Newton South and a sixth grader currently in private school. I'm here to strongly urge you to include Anna Nolan's new math program redesign in the school budget for next year. This proposal is the outcome of multiple hours that she spent attending meetings with Newton parents and listening to parents identify the most urgent concerns with Newton Public Schools. She came, she listened, and she did her job. Now it's time for you to do your job and support her most urgent change proposals that will bring our schools in line with surrounding communities. Currently, Newton ranks dead last among our peer districts in middle school math offerings. We have no coherent system of supports for struggling students, and we hold our most advanced students behind, which is unconscionable and frankly embarrassing for this district. At the last school committee meeting, some of you mentioned DEI as a priority for the district. There's no single proposal before you that will address narrowing achievement gaps more than this math redesign proposal. Dr. Nolan's plan lifts all boats, struggling students, accelerated students, and every child in between. It addresses standards, pathways, curriculum, professional development, and supports. It is exactly what someone who cares about diversity, equity, and inclusion will be eager to fund. You can hire 20 DI directors, and none will be able to address the achievement gap as effectively as this proposal. A strong math curriculum is an issue of educational equity. By not funding it, we will be reduced to the status quo. Parents who can afford the time and money replacing math offerings at NPS with RSM, so note my choice of words here, it's intentional, and those who can't afford it continuing to lag behind. One of Dr. Nolan's most important tasks was to restore the trust of parents that NPS can in fact provide appropriate education to their kids. This math program is the first and most important step in this process. In 2 years, my family will have to make a decision whether to bring my sixth grader back to NPS for high school. Being an advanced student, by ninth grade, he will be ready for pre-calculus. We want him to go to his local public school, and this is what he wants as well. However, not having an appropriately challenging math pathway for him at NPS would undermine his educational progress, suppress his natural curiosity and desire to learn. This is why I'm here
30
today.
seconds.
In conclusion, I would like to add that Jim Ellis has been my older son's BCBA and later on supervising BCBA for almost 15 years. And the consistency of supervision that Jim has provided and his expertise has been invaluable for making sure that my son can stay in his local school, which was our goal. And so I hope that you can find a way to keep Jim Ellis's position funded. Thank you.
Hi, my name is Joshua Krevitz. I live at 32 Beecher Place. I wanted to speak in support of Dr. Nolan's plan for the math reforms and Dr. Nolan's leadership in general. Newton took a little bit of a side turn where we got away from focusing on the fundamentals of education. And as someone said earlier, most of the people who move to Newton, live in Newton, come here for the school system. I think it's important, given that we have a finite amount of money to work with, that the money is directed more towards fundamental educational needs rather than secondary or other kinds of departments. If we had unlimited money, that would be one thing, but we don't. So I strongly support the reforms for math that Dr. Nolan has presented, and this is why Dr. Nolan was selected, and also why many of the people who were elected to this committee were elected last fall. Thank you.
Next, we have Nurit Friedlander, followed by Nicole Lavasser and Lisa Dibold.
Good evening. I'm here to support Dr. Nolan's math reform. I have a daughter in Newton South. I live in 735 Sawmill Brook, Newton. If the essence of DI is genuine and right, it cannot come at the expense of lowering academic standards, not here and not anywhere. And if that is what's happening, then we have a problem. Because intentions don't educate children, results do. And the results are clear. Newton ranks last. So ask yourself, honestly, what are you doing to change that? Which decision actually helps students? What is our priority? Funding another administrative position or investing in a real academic plan? One that gives students tools, structure, and a path to succeed. This is not complicated. Practice or administration, excellence or excuses, opportunity or the illusion of it. And most importantly, who are we really serving? Because if we truly care about every student, especially those who need the most support, we don't lower the bar, we raise them to meet it. I hope that when you vote on the budget today, you see one thing, and one thing only: the students, their future, and nothing else. Please vote for Dr. Nolan's math reform. Thank you very much.
Hi, my name is Nicole Levasseur, and I'm a behavior analyst in the district. I'm here tonight not only on my own behalf, but on behalf of the 255 educators across grade levels, schools, in general and special education who signed a letter that was sent to you. We are deeply concerned about the potential elimination of the supervisor of ABA services position, which has existed since 2007. This position cannot be outsourced or absorbed by a non-BACB licensed administrator. Only a BCBA at the supervisory level can legally and ethically oversee BCBAs. Outsourcing eliminates accountability and continuity, and absorbing the role removes the clinical expertise required to keep students safe and services compliant. As educators working directly with students and staff every day, we see how essential this role is to the stability of our classrooms, the effectiveness of our behavioral systems, and the success of inclusion. BCBAs support teachers directly, but that work is only effective with the supervisor of ABA's leadership. Dr. Jim Ellis ensures consistent training, best practices, and data-driven decision-making for all BCBAs in the district. This role is critical for inclusion. The supervisor ensures that BCBA caseloads remain manageable so we can spend meaningful time in classrooms, provide timely recommendations, collaborate with students, teachers, and families, and support paraprofessionals and behavior therapists. Without the supervisor's oversight, inclusion becomes less predictable, less supported, and more reactive, which impacts the learning experience for all students. When caseloads grow too large, support slows down immediately. The supervisor is the person who monitors these caseloads and reallocates support so students don't fall through the cracks. Principals also rely heavily on the supervisor of ABA to hire and screen behavior therapists, staff who work directly with our most vulnerable students. Without that clinical expertise, principals are left to evaluate highly specialized candidates without the background needed to do so safely or effectively. The legal and compliance risks are also significant. New state regulations around timeout and restrictive interventions require districts to demonstrate that interventions are function-based, least restrictive, and properly documented. Only a trained, credentialed ABA supervisor can ensure that BCBAs and all staff in the district are aligned with these requirements. Without this oversight, the district is exposed to real legal vulnerabilities. This is not an optional layer of support. It is a specialized leadership role that anchors the district's entire behavioral framework. On behalf of myself and my colleagues, I urge you to maintain the supervisor of ABA services position. Our students, our staff, and our classrooms depend on it. Thank you for listening.
After Lisa, we have Jonathan Levin, followed by Madeline McNeely.
Good evening, thank you. My name is Lisa Beebold. I live at 717 Center Street in Newton. I'm a 30-year Newton resident and a former NPS parent. I care deeply about the programming slated to lose significant funding and or to be excised. NPS is in the formative years of developing and providing cohesive support post-COVID, supporting differently abled learners, keeping and honoring spaces of community and belonging for students, and meeting the mental health challenges that impact students is crucial to a thriving educational community. My children accessed learning supports, participated in affinity groups, and engaged in other enrichment opportunities. For this, I'm thankful. While I am glad my children were able to access these programs, my advocacy was a critical component of their experience. Sometimes this required me to step up and speak out. In the earlier years as a parent at NPS, there were no community of allies for me to access. When Forge, Families Organizing for Racial Justice, was formed, I became a member of a coalition of families across Newton and Boston, advocating for equity and access in our schools. Through these efforts, a full-time DEI district-level position was created. This role was and is a means to collaborate with the school department and school administrators on behalf of NPS's diverse student body and their needs. A quote from the fiscal year 2027 public budget hearing on March 19th read, "The difficult choices guarantee a balanced budget that aligns with the city allocation while fiercely protecting the core mission of teaching, learning, and student thriving in all NPS buildings." I would like to add something. The difficult choices require that the city centers as its core values and mission the teaching of the whole child, so learning can be experienced in an environment where thriving and belonging are waiting at the school building door to greet our students every day.
You have 30 seconds.
This cannot be done without fully funding positions parents have fought for. There are rainy day funds that can be reallocated to restore these critical roles for full-time DEI, the coordinator role of mental health and SEL, sustainability, and important curricular programming that are not expendable. Students thrive when their needs are met. So please continue to fully fund ELL and ABA services as well. This is how we fiercely protect the core mission of teaching, learning, and student thriving. Thank you.
Madeline McNeely, 68 Jewett Street. The decision not to continue to fully fund the schools undermines our superintendent's vision. Are you confident in the decision the mayor has put forth? Our ask continues to be to fully fund the schools at the initial request, in addition to what you already have done. Boston Globe article, April 29th, 2025. I quote from the article, Mark Laredo, the council president, said he supports the superintendent's vision of the schools. He added, if he were mayor, and here you are, congratulations, I would have found a way to use some cash to help bridge the budget gap. Yes, the mayor, you did increase in an unprecedented way our city's school budget. And these are unprecedented times. It matters that money was found to do what is legally and morally obligated to do. However, this doesn't mean that you're realizing NPS's vision to be fully funded at the level that it's needed. To change the topic for a minute, do you all know that the average superintendent tenure in Massachusetts is 5.4 years? This illustrates how hard it is to produce meaningful educational outcomes in untenable situations every single year. Would you stick around to run a school system negotiating funding cuts like you have to do year after year after year after year? It's hard. The city has stabilization and free cash funds. We know you want to preserve them. I have financial reserves in my own life in case I become disabled. But you know what? I'm economically privileged enough to be able to do that. And so is Newton. Newton has reserve funds. These are unprecedented times, and we need money to bridge the gap, especially because these funds draw annual income similar to what NPS needs. Most of you are new actors in your roles, but the play hasn't changed in decades. What's it going to take to write a new script, a new play that inspires us year after year? These cuts will erode the quality of education you say matters and ultimately cost the system more money. In talking to NPS graduates recently, I paraphrase, cutting the sustainability coordinator teaches us that adults don't actually care about our initiatives.
30 seconds.
We have more serious mental health challenges than previous generations. The stakes are higher than they were 30 years ago. Mayor, school committee, please embody the customer service legacy you espouse. I applaud your willingness to keep negotiating as a team using consensus as your decision-making method. We're not there yet. Your voters expect you to fully fund Dr. Nolan's vision. Thank you.
After Jonathan, we'll have Amy Behrens.
Hi, excuse me. My name is John Levin. I live at 423 Ward Street. Last week, the San Francisco Board of Ed voted to restore middle school algebra after removing it years ago and experiencing declining results. Sanford economist Thomas B. said, for years, San Francisco tried to achieve equity not by raising the floor, but by lowering the ceiling. It's a problem we see nationally. Well, for years, Newton has tried to achieve equity not by raising the floor, but by lowering the ceiling. As predicted by many of us in this room, the result has been declining math achievement. The social experiment that Newton ran, just like San Francisco, failed. Many of you were not here when those decisions were made, but you're here now. And it is your responsibility to ensure that the harm does not reach another cohort. You need to implement Dr. Nolan's math reforms immediately. Thank you.
After Amy, we have Keith Bacon and Gail Clifford.
Good evening. Thank you for your time and your service to our city. My name is Amy Behrens, and I live at 19 Bowden Street. I'm a Newton parent, an alumni parent, and a parent coach who has worked closely with families across this district for over a decade. I'm here to urge you to fully fund the remaining $2.7 million needed to preserve some critical positions in our school district in DEI, mental health, ABA, ELL, and sustainability. These roles are not extras, they are not secondary, they are infrastructure. They help our system function and they serve our students well. When coordination is cut, things fall apart. And I can speak from my own experience briefly. I helped found Families Organizing for Racial Justice in 2016. When we had a funded coordinator, we connected over 1,000 families across many identities, built trust across the district, and supported meaningful engagement. When that role was cut, the work shrunk dramatically. This is exactly what will happen here. When you don't have a coordinator or a director, energy dissipates, structures fall away, and communication lapses. This is why these cuts are ultimately not cost saving, they are cost shifting. Rebuilding programs later costs more than maintaining them now. And if we lose this talent and continuity, even for 1 year, it will take years to rebuild and money to pay for it. I also want to name something important, that during the last election, the new school committee members ran on supporting the superintendent's vision. This is the moment to demonstrate that support through action and not just rhetoric. Dr. Nolan is doing incredibly difficult work, and we are very lucky to have her. But underfunding the district makes that work harder and risks losing strong leadership. And to the mayor, who's been doing all these listening circles, we ask you to continue working collaboratively to find a solution to fill this gap. Because the city does have options, there are available funds, the NPS Stabilization Fund, that could serve as a short-term bridge while longer-term solutions are developed. And most importantly, this is about trust. Our district has spent years building trust around student support, diversity, inclusion, and well-being. If we don't value these roles by funding them, it is clear that they are not a priority. And trust, once broken, takes years to rebuild. So I ask you to work together, find a way to support these positions and fund them, and recognize that as a district, this is what we stand for. And please don't let short-term pressure undo years of progress. These roles are the connective tissue of our schools and our community.
30 seconds.
Thank you.
Hi, Keith Bacon, 51 Jefferson Street. Newton's been ranked one of the best cities to live in Massachusetts for a long time. We moved here to start a family. I have a parent of a 7th grader and a 4th grader. You know, the math is quite simple here. We voted heavily to invest some of the best teachers in Massachusetts and retain them. That's fantastic. I wanted that. At the same time, we should be willing to invest to have accelerated math to go along with that. Otherwise, you know, I hear all the positive about how great accelerated math is. That's great, but we don't talk about the negatives of not doing it. The negatives are people move away, private schools, whatever. You know, we want to live and continue to live some of the best places to live in Massachusetts, and Newton is that place. Thank you.
After Gail Clifford, we have Fernando Camargo and Irina Teslar.
Gail Clifford. As BCBAs in Newton Public Schools, a primary aspect of our role daily involves responding to and managing challenging behaviors and behavioral episodes. The variety of challenging behaviors we confront and deal with is large, but can regularly include the following: property or environmental destruction, aggression against staff, aggression against peers, aggression against self or self-injurious behaviors, unsafe physical behavior, for example, climbing on things and in places not meant for climbing, and elopement or bolting from an area inside the building or from the school building itself. And a student bolting from a school building is generally much too dysregulated to care in which direction they're running or whether or not there may be vehicle traffic on the streets surrounding the school. These are just some of the more intense, potentially harmful and dangerous behaviors encountered on a daily basis by BCBAs, along with the BTs, the aides, and associated support staff in each school building. In responding, the BCBA is charged with leading and guiding the implementation of behavior support, supervising and assisting the behavioral therapists, adhering to safety care guidelines, ensuring staff and student safety, utilizing individualized strategies to de-escalate that student, a process that can take up to several hours, and most importantly, with preserving the privacy, respect, and dignity of that student. In any given behavioral crisis or episode, a student is escalated, possibly in crisis, the energy is heightened, the anxiety is elevated, there's an element of unpredictability, the risk of harm is ever present, and therefore also potential liability. While generally this role involves students on our caseloads, it's not uncommon to be summoned for support in behavioral episodes occurring with students who are not on our caseload. We're the behavior people, and this is the job of the BCBA. It's hard, honestly, to envision another special education role in which the need for supervision, support, guidance, and leadership is more critically clear. I applied for a job in Newton Public Schools because there is an ABA department, a large team of BCBAs of which I'm a very proud member, and an individual whose role, in part, is to provide supervision and support for that team. that our current supervisor also happens to be a true and trusted leader with expertise, knowledge, skill, compassion, and unwavering dedication to our success, as well as to the best and most meaningful student outcomes. Is
You have
just
30
as
seconds.
Respectfully, I believe eliminating this position would be, for everyone on the BCBA team and countless other staff and students, a highly imprudent choice. Thank you for your time.
Thank you.
Please speak right into the microphone.
Hi,
so we can-
Fernando Camargo, 38 Marston Avenue. I'm a Newton Latino father with 3 boys in Newton Public Schools, one in high school, North, Bigelow, and my youngest, Santiago, here is a rising star in Mason Rice. I am here to fully and strongly urge you to fully fund Superintendent Nolan's Math Pathways Plan. We are an immigrant family, and we moved to Newton not because of its beautiful trees, wonderful restaurants, or amazing weather. It was because of its reputation for academic excellence. It's plain. But in recent years, many families, including mine, have felt that reputation is slipping, especially in math. As you all know, Newton is ranked last based on the report among its peer districts. Confidence has been weakened, frustration has grown. Many families have looked elsewhere and have left. Many of my son's friends from elementary school have left, which is pretty sad. This is why this decision matters so much. And yeah, it is unfortunate that the funding plan might require cuts in other services, and this is really unfortunate, but the value of this investment is extraordinary. This is a reform that will touch every student in the district and strengthen one of the most important parts of their education. When difficult choices have to be made, unfortunately, this is exactly the kind of investment that should rise to the top. This plan creates a coherent math system with fair placement, stronger supports, multiple pathways, and real opportunities for students to move up when they're ready. This is not a plan for a small group of students. This is a plan to do math better for all students. And it's also the right equity choice. The current status quo is not fair if families with more means can patch the gaps without side-threading what others cannot. Newton needs to build those opportunities and supports inside public schools. Santi, for instance, is a rising star at Russian math. I would love to see his potential realized in Newton Public Schools. I also want to speak directly to the newer members of this committee. Many parents mobilized in these recent elections because academic excellence was one of the clearest promises made to this community. Families rallied around that message, and we voted for you. We believed in that message, and we're hopeful that you will now act on it. This is the kind of decision that defines legacy. Every so often, there is a choice that is truly transformative, and this is one of those choices. If you want Newton to reclaim and strengthen its reputation for academic excellence, this is how you do it.
Yeah, 30
Thank you.
seconds.
Irina Teslar, followed by Paul Sherman and Nayang Jin. Is Irina with us? No? Paul Sherman? Oh my goodness. I thought Paul was powerful, but that
Wow,
was,
Paul.
Yeah. After Paul is Nayang Jin and Enrique Rosero.
Thank you, committee members, Mayor Laredo. I'm president of the Pollinera Fund and author of the independent Math Pathways report provided to the district last year. I'm a former middle school and high school math teacher myself, and also the parent of 2 children who recently completed 13 years in Newton Public Schools. I'm here to urge you to fund the math plan in full. Where are we at? Newton ranks dead last among its peer districts and middle school math offerings. It has no coherent system of support for struggling students. The district's own surveys have revealed math as the top area of dissatisfaction. On exit surveys, many families cite it as a reason why they left the district. There are literally thousands of families who will cite this as their top concern about the district. Superintendent Nolan and her team have designed a comprehensive plan to fix this. It lifts all boats: struggling students, advanced students, and every child between. It addresses standards, pathways, curriculum, professional development, and supports. This could easily result in an entire year of academic gain across the board. And you have leadership in place right now that can effectively implement the plan. Is this plan equitable? Yes, it has upward mobility between pathways, unbiased placement, MTSS, math specialists, and summer help. These are not feel-good sound bites. This is how you actually improve academic achievement, college attainment, and long-term opportunity. How does one prioritize this in the budget? This is not a bells and whistles add-on. This is a transformative reform of core academics for the entire district. The cost is less than 0.5% of the district's budget. For this, you can fix the most broken part of the district's academics for a generation of students. The plan's budget is already bare bones. In my professional work, I see these kinds of reforms often costing more than $5 million for districts of Newton's size. You are getting so much for so little. Most of you are just a few months into your tenure as committee members, and it just so happened that a once-in-20-year opportunity has come to you disguised as a budget item. You will not see an opportunity this big or this cheap again. You ran for these seats because you believe Newton can do better, and this is your chance to prove it decisively and at minimal cost. The legacy of this committee and this mayor will be defined by decisions like this one, whether you seized a generational opportunity or let it slip away over a fraction of a percent of budget. Please do the math. Thank you.
Nayoung Jin, she in the room? Or he in the room? No. Enrique Rosero, followed by Samuel Tettleman.
Good evening. Enrique Rosero, 19 Garland. Many short-term solutions to the current budget shortfall exist, but Mr. Laredo has shut down any potential avenue to bridge the gap. Newton faces a crisis that is as much as political will as it is about dollars. We're caught between a real revenue problem where municipal costs outpace Proposition 2.5 and a spending problem manufactured by ideological critics. For years, voices like Matt Hills and the Kids First PAC have pushed the narrative of waste, blending fiscal responsibility with their anti-union ideology. This rhetoric has led many to believe that we can simply cut staff and services expecting the same or better outcomes. The cuts proposed for this year are painful, forcing, as Mr. Lee has said, a choice between core academics and our values. We cannot simply redeploy inexistent math specialists, nor can we absorb key roles in DEI, sustainability, and special education oversight. These cuts, however, are nothing compared to what is coming if we continue to just hope for the best without a real long-term funding strategy. Unlike fair-weather politicians in City Hall, leaders in Arlington and Brookline are having honest conversation about the necessity of overrides to maintain level services. Meanwhile, MPS remains stuck in a cycle of doing less with less and pitting communities that want excellence versus the other values. If you find these decisions difficult, you must act. You will have either to challenge the neighborhood school model, the class sizes, electives, or on the other hand, champion the superintendent's plan and lead a campaign on why we must pay for the excellence we claim to demand. Platitudes will not fix a broken system. Only a multi-year funding commitment and not the uncompromising allocation on Mr. Layoff will set us in a different path. Thank you.
Samuel Titleman. Yeah. So, animi cultus humanitatis cibus is the motto of the school that I am in, Newton North. Translates to learning sustains the human spirit. And I think this idea has been decreasing lately. So a few months ago, Mayor Loretto visited my psychology class and asked what we can improve. And I think the easiest and most clear step right now is to fund this math reform plan. So growing up, I took math classes starting from 3 and 4 years old. But this is due to my parents pushing me into math. Not everyone has this opportunity. And I think it would be great if more people had this opportunity throughout school in the Newton Public Schools. So going into 9th year, I was taking AP Calculus outside of school. And then I emailed the math department about my score. And I asked if I could take a placement test to maybe take a higher level class next year. And I was fully declined. I had multiple meetings. My mother came to talk to the principal, but there was really no negotiation, no option. So I also have 2 younger sisters who will be, one will be joining Newton North next year and another will be joining kindergarten next year. And it would be really great if they had the opportunity to skip some classes. They are qualified, and also for people who are not exposed to these resources outside of school to have acceleration in school and to be motivated to do this extra math. Thank you.
James Yeagle, followed by Wei Lin, followed by Natalia Sawicha.
Good evening. I will keep this short, but I just wanted to speak again in favor of the math reforms and supporting that with the budget. Thank you.
Wei Lin? Wei Lin is not here. We'll move to Natalia Sawicha. Not injure our students.
Hi, my name is Natalia Savitska, 26 Prentice Road, and I am an alum of Newton North, class of 2022. And I'm here to urge the mayor to please fully fund the NPS level services budget for the fiscal year 2027 at $317.3 million. Specifically, to speak to the importance of Superintendent Nolan's proposed math department reforms and to the importance of the sustainability director role. So my 8th grade year was actually the last class that had the opportunity to take accelerated learning classes in math, to skip a year ahead and go to 9th grade math at Newton North instead of taking 8th grade classes at Bigelow. And I saw firsthand the benefit for my peers who had this opportunity, students who did math not because they were pushed to do it, but because they loved it, one of whom is now a math major at Harvard. She's spent her whole life doing math, loving math, and she had this opportunity to be supported by the district. So she was excited, she was intellectually stimulated, she was excited to go to class instead of just sitting there and doodling because she already knew everything in the curriculum. And conversely, I also saw the damage that was done when this was no longer an option for students in schools in my younger brother, who was, again, a student who loved math, spent weekends just puzzling over math problems, talking them over with my dad because he loved it. And he got to his classes in middle school and high school, and the school just was not meeting him where he was at. So from love of learning, he went to frustration. Countless meetings with the head of the math department and nothing. They couldn't do anything. So I saw a kid who had so much passion for math go to someone who was just frustrated and sat in math, bored and not intellectually stimulated. So more than just supporting the kids who love math, these reforms would also support students who are struggling. And in my experience at Newton North, very few people were happy with the way that the math curriculum was led. You were either ahead because you had taken outside of school math classes and you were bored, or you were lost and confused. So Superintendent Nolan has put so much time and effort to create a math plan that would support equity and excellence as our public school system claims to support. And this would put those words into reality. And I'd also, with my remaining time, just like to speak to the importance of the sustainability director role. So at Newton North, I was co-director of the Climate Collective. So the sustainability initiatives that I saw in my time at North were student-led, and they were hard work. They took so much logistical planning and just background research to like understand what needed to be done and what we can advocate for. And that was all just on our own time because we loved it. And as a recent graduate of BU in the Marine program and someone who wants to dedicate her life to sustainability and supporting our environment, it is a slap in the face to see this position being cut as our planet is facing unprecedented ecological crisis. So please support these sustainability initiatives to show that your kids, that you care for them and that you care for their future. Thank you.
Next is Lindsay Golden, followed by Christine Dutt and Riel Montang.
Hello, my name is Lindsay Golden. I'm at 19 Garland Road. During the last election, every new member of this committee ran on a platform of supporting our superintendent. Now is the time to show us what that support looks like. Supporting a superintendent doesn't simply mean presiding over the decline of her and of dismantling of her vision. It means fighting for the resources that she needs to make that vision, including funding our values and funding math at the same time, a reality. It means using your political capital to explain why full funding is important to the community. Superintendent Nolan has done her part. She has already skimmed where she can, finding efficiencies in an increasingly tight environment. We've reached the bone. We are now seeing cost-saving measures, like putting the head of the ABA on the chopping block, that are, quite frankly, insignificant to the total budget, but devastating to our district's integrity. When we target positions that support our most vulnerable students, or when we threaten to shut down our progress on DEI and sustainability, or when we fail to fund math, we aren't just saving a few dollars. We're signaling a shift in our values. These cuts don't address the structural funding gap. They simply create bigger, more expensive problems down the road in student outcomes and lost trust. Mayor Laredo, you campaigned on a promise of collaboration and listening to stakeholders. Your current take-it-or-leave-it approach is the opposite of collaboration. We cannot collaborate our way through a budget that forces us to manage the decline of our schools. I applaud you for making progress towards refinancing, a prudent refinancing of our pension obligation. Now I ask you to also prudently use the Education Stabilization Fund, which has millions of dollars in it, to serve as a bridge to get us to the place where we can continue to easily level fund services, including the level funding of our school budget. Committee, I'm asking you to be advocates that the people of Newton elected you to be. It is time to stop looking for more items to cut and start looking for ways to grow the pie. Although I'm glad that the process this year, genuinely, I'm glad this process this year is more collegial and you guys get along. With respect, that is not the metric for success. Whether or not you guys can be collegial does nothing for the community. Whether or not you fund the level service budget does. Our children have already endured enough disruption. They cannot afford more cuts, and they certainly cannot afford a leadership that stays quiet when they should be standing up. Please honor your campaign promises. Advocate for what our schools actually need to be excellent. Thank you.
After Christine, Gabrielle. And then Corey Papas.
My name is Christine Dutt. My address is 13 Crescent Street, Newton. I've got a 9th grader and a 12th grader at Newton North. This feels really familiar. The mayor announces their allocation for the MPS budget. The superintendent says that's not enough for level service, even after adjusting for enrollment changes. There's a structural deficit in the MPS budget. The thing is, Newton has been here since I attended my first school committee meeting in 2016. There are some good developments that I'd like to call out today. I really appreciate the positive change in tone around the table this year. I appreciate that the words operating override were said last week with the acknowledgement that one may very well be necessary. I very much appreciate that Mayor Laredo has increased the allocation for NPS by an unprecedented amount, and yet it is still not enough. I also want to call out a development I never anticipated. I'm disappointed and appalled that NPS would suggest cutting or reducing the Director for Diversity, Equity, and Inclusion. I expected better from NPS. That's critical to reducing persistent achievement gaps and to NPS's stated mission of supporting and challenging every student. I take the mayor at his word that the funding is what the funding is this year, but I would be remiss if I did not advocate for more money and for a plan for more funding next year and the years after that. Newton is a district experiencing the proverbial death by 1,000 cuts, and we desperately need a path forward to adequate funding for school and for municipal services. We only get there if our elected officials are willing to share some uncomfortable truths and have hard conversations. So I urge you, the school committee, and Mayor Laredo to get to work and to get behind the superintendent. Start by showing the public what a decade of cuts has meant for students. Then show the public what could be done to challenge and to support every Newton Public Schools student every day when there is adequate funding. But back to this year's budget. To use an old adage, this year very much is the same song, different verse feel to it. And maybe we've had a change in key too, but the chorus remains the same. Fully fund Newton Public Schools. Thank you for your consideration.
My name is Riel Montag. I live on Berkeley Street in West Newton. I am an NPS parent of 2 daughters in middle school and active volunteer, but I'm speaking on my own accord. Every year, NPS is asked to do more with less. I do not envy your position that you constantly are finding yourselves in, although I know that some of you are new to the committee. You know the story. You're trying to sustain a school system, improve it, meet the diverse needs of our student body, while heeding our values. So thank you for your work on this effort. There have been a lot of great things said tonight. I'm going to focus on one particular issue that's near and dear to my heart. And also, I can't speak tonight without sort of acknowledging the state of our country, what's happening in our world. And I don't think that it serves us as a community or our students to talk and act as if we live in a bubble, because we don't. NPS says that among other things, it values diversity, it values equity, and it values inclusion. NPS has embraced a promise to be a place where every student can thrive, where every student is known, challenged, and supported. While I acknowledge the attempt not to impact the core experience of NPS students through budget cuts, the elements of NPS that uphold and implement our values are indeed important to the core experience of our students. Public education is not just about reading, writing, and arithmetic. It's the cornerstone of democracy, and it serves to build community and develop good citizens. And I think that our children matter to us, and that's what we want. We want them to be great in math. We want them to be good people. If we value diversity, racial equity, and anti-racism work, We need to have an administrator to lead this work for our schools. Minimizing the role of the DEI director would likely negatively impact the ability of NPS to manage issues that disproportionately impact the ability of students of color to thrive in our schools. I'm not confident that staff members who are not experts in this area can take on the important work of the DEI office, nor am I confident that other staff will prioritize such work given their other very real and substantial responsibilities. Going back to the bigger picture, in a climate where no one can credibly argue at this point that our federal government is dismantling and attacking DEI efforts and that it's not rooted in racism,
You have 30
in a
seconds.
climate where African American history is literally being attacked, their efforts to whitewash our history, roll back the facts about what has happened in our country's history. This is not the time to scale back efforts on diversity, equity, inclusion in our community. And it definitely sends the wrong message about what we stand for. The work of the Office of DEI impacts the core experience of all of our students because these issues actually do matter to all of our students, not just the ones that look like my children. But it definitely also potentially it impacts the experiences of those students possibly even more. Their ability to fit in, belong, thrive. So anyway, I just want to say that I urge you not to cut the DEI funding, the funding for the director position. I definitely urge you to fully fund our budget. I don't think that we should be trying to do more for less. So I support Dr. Nolan's proposed budget and ask that you support funding it fully. Thank you.
One more speaker in the room, Corey Pappas, and then virtually we have Cindy Green and Shara Ertel.
Hello, my name is Corey Pappas. I live at 15 Beach Street, number 2 in Newton. I'm here today to plead with you to not make these cuts to NPS. In 2024, approximately 750,000 minors, in other words, 750,000 children in the US attempted suicide, and millions had suicidal thoughts, and those are just the ones we know about. In that same year, 1 in 31 children were diagnosed with autism. Yet 2 of the positions on the table for an elimination have to do with mental health and ABA, not to mention other support services. A study a few years ago showed that public schools K through 12 in the US are underfunded by approximately $1.5 billion. Even if children don't understand what this means, they hear adults talking about it. And when they hear adults talking about underfunding their schools, it says to them, you do not matter, you are undervalued. It does not matter how much we say to children, you are the future. If that is not followed up by meaningful action, it is simply lip service. Mr. Mayor, thank you for all that you have done so far, and I admit to not knowing the ins and outs of this budget. But it does bother me to know that here we sit with a new mayor, and yet here we also sit still fighting for the funding of NPS. I also know that during your campaign, you said you truly value and support public education. Please show us that you do, and that what you pledged was not simply lip service. Show the children of Newton that following up with what you say with actions that match those words actually matters. Thank you.
So no remote at all. Okay. That concludes public comment. Thank you all. Thank you for staying. We will move directly to the superintendent's update. We do not have a consent agenda tonight, so we will recap the budget.
Just waiting for Stephen to bring me device to.
Stephen, are you out there?
No, we're looking for Stephen now, but thank you.
He has the PowerPoint, sorry. Are you driving from there, Stephen, or am I driving?
voice of Stephen Gumman.
Oh, here he comes. I didn't know where you were. I know, lack of online speakers. Yeah, thank you so much. Set? Okay, thank you to all of the speakers and my colleagues who came in support of our colleagues this evening, and for all the discussion from everyone about our core values and the vision for district work. I do just want to take a moment to remind everyone that the district's Thrive 2030 plan actually has plans for academic and social emotional student mental health and well-being goals that we value equally, and also includes goals for student and staff belonging, an HR plank for attracting and retaining diverse staff, and ensuring that we upgrade facilities and create stable funding environments. The Thrive plans are an ecosystem that work together, and I reject the dichotomy that we are trying to have academic excellence over equitable access to learning, belonging, and growth. We want it all. That said, we live in a reality of situation where we just need to recap the journey that we've been on. So tonight we want to review the budget proposals, additions, and revisions since March 9th, talk about impact and next steps, and the school committee has some decisions to make about options, which our community has framed for us this evening quite well. Just as a budget recap, a historic allocation from the city, for which I am grateful, honored our base budget for last year and was added 5.75% increase over that, meaning that the funding available to us to address what the district needs is as follows: 17.1 million, 12 of which was taken up by mandated salary increases, 4.4 million by healthcare costs, and therefore the $700,000 remaining deals with all other inflationary and rising costs for the system. And those costs are about $2.8 million just to level fund our budget for the year. That's difficult, and if you're reading the Globe and the Times and all of the newspapers in the area, that is a story that many districts are facing right now. And we hope that you saw some of our delegation meeting where we're meeting with whoever we can to tell the story of our needs so that our ecosystem can be fully funded. We did have some mandates and community priorities for this budget, whether it was level funded or not, that had to be addressed. One of those is a DESE audit related to our time on learning, and a net amount of learning minutes had to be addressed, which had a cost to it. You heard about the bell-to-bell ban that is before us in the state legislature. Newton has been ahead of the curve with implementing this K-12 in, we think, level appropriate ways. The one most costly part of that is our middle school solution, which is yonder pouches and staffing to do that. Our staff have to touch at each school between 400 and 700 cell phones twice a day to lock them up in these secure pouches. As a longtime middle school principal, I can tell you that's no small task, nor is it a popular way to start your day, let me say that. But we'd rather do that than have our teachers contending with those arguments and degrading learning within the classroom and relationships between teachers and students, which is the core to the learning environment. So too, the core of the learning environment, you heard many of our ABA staffers tell us about the need for safe special education environments at our day middle school. Both our Bridge and Reflections programs, our students are aging up out of the elementary schools into those places, and additional teachers are needed. These are not negotiable. These are mandates and requirements that we must fund. So knowing that our allocation is our allocation, the school committee has made several types of discussions and adjustments over time. There are both personnel adjustments to reduce our overall costs and non-personnel levers to be pulled to try to back into the allocation of $314 million. This was presented to the school committee, which introduced the fact that we would need to make central office, sort of middle management cuts, reduce some interns, deal with the city to reassess our healthcare impacts, summer projects that are generally paid for through city funding and reducing that, using some one-time funds for science curriculum implementation, addressing an adjustment with utilities. We are opening 4 new campuses right now. We're in flux with what the impact in terms of utilities will be with those 4 campuses. But my experience in opening new buildings that are more efficient but use more energy and have a larger footprint is that there are additional costs. Those are reflected here. Reducing budgets like our DEI budget. Calculus project funding was added back through the generous contributions of our Newton Schools Foundation and has been level funded in this budget. So initially we were trying to expand the program. So I just want to be clear about that. There were a couple questions to me over the weekend. And so that got us to from level service to a $314 million budget. But as you know, we have been trying to put forward additions from our Thrive 2030 plan that take the next steps, we think, in growing the district in the manner that we have heard from countless parents and from students about what we would like to do next. This is not, trust me, I got a lot of Thrive additions over the next 5 years. So we tried to put those out over several years. The request at the March 18th meeting was, what would it take for us to make the strategic academic additions around mathematics? We have done a solid year of study on this with our teachers. We have a plan. We're poised to do it. Is this the year to do it? This is the cost of the components of 8 middle school math specialists, summer math programming for students below benchmark, keeping the calculus project. I just want to say that program is a proof of concept and shows the return on investment when the combination of mathematics and affinity group and diversity, equity, inclusion work come together to help students thrive. So this program is a package in order for us to implement Math Pathways programs, which allow us agility, flexibility in meeting the needs of struggling learners and advanced learners. So to try to further reduce the level service budget to be able to pay for this, there has to be reductions in other areas of spending and redeployment in order to address the mathematics request. So there are personnel levers to that and non-personnel levers, just as in the prior staffing and non-staffing recommendations. And to that end, some things have come into clearer focus. 2 things. 1, English language learner audit has indicated that certain ways we have been delivering services are not in compliance with the WIDA and state expectations and should be revised, so we can make some ELL reductions there. And Newton North staffing, just like we took enrollment reductions at the elementary level, these are the commensurate staffing reductions for the Newton North High School. That said, I do want to say that prior to my being the superintendent here, the high schools did take the lion's share of reductions in terms of moving to fewer electives or larger class sizes. That's often the case during budget difficulties. Secondary schools take the brunt because it's harder to like cancel 3rd grade or 4th grade classes or a music program and those pieces. So those are some pieces that we think we can take based on enrollment. We have some tuition funds that offset other expenses. So NECP brings in revenue that can then pay for more staff members there and take those staff members off of the operating budget. You heard that we received a special ed earmark of $200,000 just recently. So we are putting that into the mix for how we're adding back 0.5 ABA services for the much needed director of ABA services. Other adjustments are in the food service lunch area. We are counting on at least $75,000 special ed grant regarding METCO. We have received that for the last several years. That is a risk assumption, though, that I am putting forward here, that we will receive that. We've been working with the city to further reduce some Medicare costs. And then we've made a deal with our graphics department at North about taking on some projects that we would have done in a different way previously. So with those adjustments, we have come to a balanced budget implementing mathematics. But of course, there are some difficult trade-offs that still the committee has to decide. So I do want to say that we've tried to leverage non-traditional sources. They are not ongoing sources of revenue. So we will have to continue to have the discussions about long-range sustainable sources of additional revenue. This does restore 0.5 of our ABA services supervisor. It does take on a little bit of risk. So I want to just name that. And it does mean that there will be duties across the system distributed differently than they are now. And that is an interactive dialogue with our staff, the staff affected, and their unions as appropriate. That's called impact bargaining, and we will do that. We have relied more heavily on revolving funds and internal efficiency in order to come to this budget. And I still want to say, I want all of the things funded for our total ecosystem and Thrive 2030 plan, but I also know we have to live and work within the city resources that are allotted to us. So there's been some questions about how we will distribute some of the operational load. I did speak to this last week about some pieces of planning and who that will return to, some to me, some to our CFO. I do want to say that other districts do provide some of the services that are being reduced through different means. Some of those are through specialized external consultancies. Some are through targeted internal stipends that build internal leadership in those different pockets. Those are things we're going to need to explore if this is the direction that we move in. That may mean that there'll be some departmental leadership facilitation by individuals within departments. That may mean we distribute affinity group leadership differently. It may mean that graduate professional development is done differently in the city than it is now for us. But these are all ways that districts in the Commonwealth address these services in many, many districts. And I will bring a transition plan back to the community and to the school committee as these come into clear focus. What we want, of course, is we want as much specialized expertise and consultancies for those roles within our system that need it, clinical support consultancies for mental health services and clinical case management for ABA services. We are going to need that whether we have it in-house or we outsource it. So there is that need, and it's real, and you've heard that from my colleagues at all of these meetings and in correspondence. So we will continue to seek grant consultation, and I know there's this worry that I'm losing steam on this. It only firms the resolve to find those creative strategies and grant cycles that we need to in order to fully fund what we think needs to happen for our young people. So I am committed to that. My team is committed to that. And we understand that we are in a very difficult time, like many of our brother and sister teams across the Commonwealth. I also want to say our elimination of custodial staff and some assistant staff in the NISA administrative assistant unit mean that simply this building will be closed more often than not in the evenings. During the day, it will be open. And nights we have school committee, we will be here, but we will redeploy those custodians to our expanded footprint across the school system. And we are talking with our administrative assistant unit now about impacts for them. So the school committee has some options for consideration. Finance team and I have just tried to summarize what they are. Path A is level service, so first tranche of scenarios with no math programming. It solves the initial gap. It avoids secondary impacts and reductions, but it does not take us forward on the Thrive initiatives. Path B is the 314.5 with math. And so that's the full package of activities that we're talking about here. So the final is to reject all options and go back to the drawing board for new structural solutions. So those are, I think, and there may be more iterations. I just tried to summarize so that the conversation could be framed for the committee. This is your budget to approve, and I serve the committee, but this is what I think is before us in terms of decisions. I do want to say that no matter what the decision, we will keep the Thrive 2030 mission moving forward. And that may mean some alternative activities like trying to raise additional outside funding. That may be grant funding or any option in between that, so that we can continue to bring the best possible experience to the Newton Public Schools students. And we will do that in partnership with our teachers union, our custodial union, NISA, and all of our colleagues who are administrators, so that we can move forward productively and that no one individual is unduly impacted by additional workload. Thank you.
All right, we will open it up for discussion directly. I don't know who would like to. Mayor Laredo.
Thank you. So I'm going to tee it off. Thank you, Superintendent, for that cogent presentation of the options. I just want to remind the public, I know this is difficult, but we are providing a 7.38%, that's almost 7.4% allocation above last year's base allocation. I don't recall any time that has been done in recent memory, and we're providing additional funds for the science curriculum as well in one-time free cash. There are difficult choices that we make on the city side. We make them every single day. We're going through our own budget process right now, and there are difficult trade-offs. I can assure you that the municipal side of the budget is getting far less of an increase than the school system is. Rightly so. This is where our money is. This is really important. This is the most important. But I just have to keep saying and saying and saying we don't have unlimited funds. And it's to those who say, well, just go into the rainy day fund. That's not prudent. And I will not do something that's not fiscally prudent. You don't go into a rainy day fund because you're facing some difficult choices in terms of funding. Same thing with the stabilization fund. We need that stabilization fund to go over several years at least. We could take more money this year, but then next year we'd be in a worse situation. So we are going to continue to work with the superintendent. We're going to work with the school committee leadership. That work, I assure you, is going to start this summer. And we've already told the superintendent and the school committee leadership what we can expect by way of increases, not just for the following year, but for the year after that, so we can set the table appropriately, so we can have reasonable expectations as to what growth is going to be like. And we will continue to do that. I'm always open to creative ideas. There are always, in every single budget process, difficult choices. And I understand the concept of level services. On the city side, we look at it a little bit differently. I'm not suggesting the schools do, but we look at how do we redeploy resources? How do we take finite resources and put them where we think we need to spend the money the most? And that's why, colleagues, I will urge everyone to go with Path B, which includes the math funding. That is an important part of the superintendent's Thrive budget. I think many of us heard over and over and over again as we talked to folks all across the city that math was a place that was lacking, particularly in middle school math. And this is an alternative that has the opportunity to affect a very broad group of children. Is it going to work perfectly? I don't know. Superintendent doesn't know. That's something that you take a risk on and you try. And I think if we're going to do this, we should commit to doing that, not just for next year and then take it away, but really give it the time to see if it works. And if it doesn't work, the superintendent will pivot.
It will work. Perfection is a different matter.
I have confidence that it will, but I always say that it's not a bad thing to try something different that we think with reasonable certainty is going to have a marked improvement in the way we educate our kids. So I would just urge my colleagues to join me in voting for Path B. Difficult choices, I freely admit that, but I think given the finite amount of money that we have, I think this is the best alternative. Thank you.
Mika? Thanks, Alicia. So I'm always conscious that the best persons to speak are speak on a change or on a decision are the people who are at the center. And with that in mind, I would like to reiterate by reading for my colleagues something that you may have seen in your inboxes earlier today. You may not. Our inboxes have been absolutely flooded. Rightly so, rightly so. However, one of the positions which is up for much debate and potential reduction, the DEI director has submitted words that I think are important for us to hear and consider. And so I would like to go over that now. This morning, or I think it might have been yesterday, I'm not quite sure, Kathy writes that she shares this in the interest of clarity, so we have a fuller understanding of the scope, depth, and responsibilities of a high-functioning DEI department as you consider your decision. She continues, the true work of diversity, equity, and inclusion requires systemic efforts at multiple levels and involves integration at the student, staff, administrative, community, and governance levels. It requires persistent communication and reiteration of values, ongoing training, and shifting mindset and instructional practices, intentional, culturally responsive learning communities, rejection of exclusive and harmful practices, accountability of harm, celebration of advancement, and empowerment of voices that are perpetually marginalized. With a visible commitment to these tenets is how meaningful recruitment and retention are subsequently maximized. Kathy writes, I am proud to be part of a community that shares core values and deep commitment to equity. I have been surrounded by incredible colleagues who have demonstrated a genuine conviction to disrupt what we know is unjust. However, positioning this work, particularly in a district of this size, as something that can be sustained through supplemental efforts by those with other primary responsibilities is both ineffective and harmful. It undermines the integrity of the work and also diminishes the contributions of my colleagues across the Commonwealth who serve in similar roles and find themselves in similar compromised positions in their school districts as it relates to budgets. So, as I said, it's important to hear directly from those with the most expertise about what this proposed reduction might mean. We heard from the ABA supervisor, from the staff that support this position, that are under this position, and it occurred to me that the reason we weren't hearing from staff under the DEI department is because it's a department of one. So again, it's crucial that we hear from the director of that department. So Mayor Laredo, you mentioned that you're always open to creative ideas. You just said that. However, there's no rainy day fund. There's no stabilization fund. There's no free cash. There's no override. I would posit that for this committee, we need to think creatively on our own in a direction that is entirely our own to move towards. If we are looking to break the cycle whereby every single year we are cutting, death by 1,000 cuts, I heard, cutting positions that are near and dear to the mission and the values of this community, to the delivery of student outcomes. If we're doing $3 million of cuts year over year, we are not going to be able to get to a place where we can thrive. We are going to be rather than thriving, we are just eroding, perpetually eroding. We'll be right back here next year, $3 million more of cuts. The 8 math interventionists that we are struggling, and to be clear, there is not a person up here who doesn't support adding 8 interventionists. It is deeply desired and held by all of us. The question is, how do we fund that in any way that means that we can keep it long-term and not be cutting it or cutting something else next year in order to furnish it? So, creative solutions. I would direct our superintendent to propose to this committee a path for us to break that cycle, and propose it by putting forward a school choice model that addresses our under-capacity schools, our underfilled classes. We have classes where we have half empty seats. If we can put a body in that seat, a student who will become a Newton Public School student and benefit from all of the supports that we are trying to preserve year over year, I suggest that we move forward with that because it is the healthiest, most sustainable, long-term way for us to both improve our district by doing some of these things we desire and be able to sustain them over time. Oh, that's it for now. I'm sure I have more to wax on later, but.
Linda and then Jonathan.
Tamika, you so eloquently stole my thunder. What I would add on to that is, Superintendent, last week you gave us a very informative brown bag session about school choice and how it could potentially drive revenue to the district, something that we know has not been supported by the broader community in years past. But maybe we are at such a point, as Tamika so eloquently described. And so the question I have on the table is, you provided those 3 options. Should we talk about where does school choice fit into these 3 options and how that would potentially change some of the cuts that we heard so many people speak towards today?
Sure. So, should the committee choose to do that, there is a process. So it may not change the moment we are in right now. But what I think Tamika is trying to say to us is, if we want to cement the programming that we're putting forward, a recurring revenue source is necessary, because even with the longer-term allocations before us, we may be in this same situation addressing the longstanding structural deficit. So what I hear is, what is that recurring source going to be that would stabilize this decision for mathematics, and then whatever else we decide to do. So it would take a little time to make the lottery and all the things, but the idea is that by next year at this time, we have a 12-year source of revenue from that initial opening school choice.
Jonathan and then Mayor Laredo.
Do you want to comment on school choice specifically? Because I was going to take us in a different direction, and I'm willing to.
I do. School choice, number 1, is not going to make a difference this year. Number 2, it is a $5,000 payment for 23,000 plus of costs that we have per pupil. So it is a very complicated question, which is why every school committee for the last 20 years has rejected it. So I'm always open to discussion, but there were good reasons why prior school committees have consistently rejected. I'll add that $5,000 has not increased in many years, while the cost per pupil has gone up every single year. So I put that out there, but should not be part of our budget deliberation right now.
Sure, go ahead.
Very gracious of you, Jonathan. I
Hey.
appreciate that.
Yeah.
I would simply say that if we are looking to determine our own funding path, there is no other option. We needn't run it by our mayor for putting it forward. We needn't depend on city council's approval or not. School choice is entirely something that this committee can move forward on its own, and funds will pour into this district exclusively. That should be an attractive goal for this committee, and one that I think is worthy of us inserting into the budget process as we are looking to cut deeply.
My turn. Maybe I'd say a couple of things. I think the first is I don't have at the moment a point of view on school choice, although I do support the idea of thinking differently. I think I have spoken, a couple of times in these meetings about my point of view that I do think we have a structural problem that we need to sort out. I will confess I am increasingly resigned to the idea that I'm not sure that we're going to figure that out for this year. I do think that it's a process that we need to figure out over the next year, and we need a path that gives us a way to get to where we need to go. This ain't it, right? None of the three versions of this are that path. I think I've also said that I believe that the challenge that we face here is actually deeper, I think, than we're admitting, because I still think we have the carry forward problem, which we kind of set off to the side. I do think, however, to be honest with you, I think it is a little unfair to the community to consistently frame what is happening in this budget plan as 2.7 or $3 million worth of cuts. There's $1 million of incremental revenue in this plan coming from different places, from different components of what we're doing. There's $200,000 worth of sped spend coming from the state, right? There's $132,000 worth of NECP tuition. These are not cuts. These are adds to what it is that we're taking in. There's, so I think, there's $325,000 worth of science. There's $500,000 worth of incremental money coming from the city in order to fund summer CapEx projects that were previously part of the budget. So I think it's really important, candidly, that we're honest both with ourselves and with the community, because the other thing that's in here, right, is like, I don't know, it's like $500,000 worth of enrollment adjustments. When you finish backing that all down, that's not $3 million worth of cuts, right? It's like $1.5 million, which is a big deal. We shouldn't have to make those decisions. That's not where we want to be. But I think it is important for the community to appreciate like where that really actually gets us to. I will go back to my original point, which is this is not the answer for us for the long term. None of us can be satisfied with that. But I think it is unfair to continually sort of characterize everything as off. So that's my response. Please.
I just want to say to you that this year, a similar set of risk assumptions was placed on us for precision funding of substitutes. So in the end, these constitute cuts we make to other things to fund things we didn't appropriately fund in the budget up front. So I want to say that. And to be fair, we've said reductions, offset, and revisions to the funding plan. So, but it doesn't mitigate the fact that even the risk assumptions become cuts if the assumptions we thought were true become true.
Carry forward.
Not just carrying forward.
But my point, I'm trying to agree with you.
Okay.
Dr. Nolan, I'm trying to agree with you. And
all right, awesome.
I see that. I see because look, the other bucket in various places where we've stripped flexibility from you and your team to actually be able to do your jobs, right? And we are, as we've talked about before, dancing on the head of, for the record, $340 million worth of total spend, right? Not 314 once you include the other spend. And so we are talking about the edge of management rounding error here. That is like where we're at, right? We have made your job harder. Let's be very clear, right? But I just go back to, I think characterizing it as we are stripping all of that out of the schools, I think is tricky.
If I may, Madam Chair, just for the public, I'll use the NECP tuition revolver as an example. This is not just money that we hang on to. When a mid-year student ages into the preschool and has medically complex needs, like needs a medical assistant at all times, or another paraprofessional, or some behavioral occupational therapy need, we don't have to come back to ask for additional money because we have that flexibility within the tuition revolver. If that is gone, you will see me coming to the city more often for money, and it's not because of mismanagement. It's because we don't have our own accounts to be able to draw from. And that's, some districts run that way. I'm used to more flexibility so that we can meet the needs of the students who arrive at our door. because we are a public school, we have to take all comers.
If I might, like, I don't know, Mr. Mayor, I don't know that we manage it. Do we manage other city departments with no, I won't even use the free cash term, but like no assumption of squish on the end? Like, do we budget to the last penny in every other department that we run the city through? Does that question make sense? Like, you at the city level get to keep a cushion, right? In right, appropriate fiscal management for the city. The budget, the way we've structured it here for the schools, there really isn't a line item in here that's like, we need some flexibility because we don't know what's going to happen.
Budget to what expected spend is going to be. We are always going to have some money to follow the free cash because we need to then fund school projects.
Right.
Okay, so when the roof at a school goes, that doesn't go to the school budget, that goes to free cash and the city pays for it. So yes, we do have an expectation that we're going to have some extra money, but that's because with free cash, we pay for excess snow and ice. We pay for those school building emergencies. We pay for all those things. So there's a reason for that. The school budget's different, but I understand, and I think you're right, superintendent is operating on a tighter constraint here with assumptions that if they're wrong, will be problematic.
Aligned, and to be clear, the city needs that cushion. My point is that part of what we have done in this budget process is scraped I believe most of the rest of that cushion out of the school system, which just makes it harder. I'm not saying it's wrong. I'm not saying they did anything wrong. I'm just saying, like, it's a harder thing to manage. That's all.
Victor?
Thank you, Madam Chair. And I apologize for my asthma cough. It persists. Fun times. Okay, so first of all, I want to express my gratitude that I know many folks, including the superintendent, have been very active over the weekend trying to figure out a lot of different things, including questions from myself and others. I am grateful to Representative Wall for finding the $200,000 that I think has been correctly allocated, or proposed to be allocated, I should say, to covering at least part of Dr. Ellis's work on the ABA front. It's not everything, but I think it's, I'm glad to hear I'm glad you listened to us, put it that way. And I think that's an excellent use of the funds. I think Mayor Laredo, you've made a very compelling argument in terms of your respective thing. I know we'll agree to disagree on certain issues. That will always be the key. For me, the crux of a potential disagreement, I think, is, and I don't want to put words in your mouth, this is my interpretation, is the timing around how long it will take before we can actually resolve more structural issues, right? I could be wrong here. If we all said, for example, that we thought we could resolve these things in year 2, in year 3, or year 4, maybe most of us would say, then it's okay to tap into ESF funds. It's not ideal, right? Again, these are not, we don't want to use one-time things for recurring costs. Fiscally, I understand that, and I generally subscribe to that. I think the tension point I'm trying to elicit is, I think there's mixed opinions on two different things. One, how long it will take us, how much time do we need to buy? I guess number one, right? How much time do we need to buy to get to that point where we can resolve these things? And as a new school committee, as much as I like to say we could have changed things, 3 months in is not enough time in this cycle to do it, and that's unfortunate. I agree with Tamika that there's a very limited amount of options that are, uniquely within our distinct control. I mean, I do believe we need to talk about an override situation, which I've felt bad being, that horse. By the way, our friends over in Arlington just last week approved $14.8 million. Like, fantastic job by them. And I consider, Liz Holman, their superintendent, they're a wonderful mentor. So, by the way, that was done after about a year's worth of effort. Right? It takes a lot of time to have those conversations. Jeff Thielman, their chair, and many other folks who've been on their board for quite a long time, school committee, I should say. That is a concerted effort that was done. Obviously, it's a little easier. Well, I shouldn't say easier. It's different because they have a town structure. It's not quite the same as a mayoral situation, but it's nice and reassuring to see that there are other folks in similar communities that have decided that this is a priority. But again, I think it's number one, I think the question is how much time do we need to buy? And number two, if we need to buy that time, how do we do so, right? And again, I don't want to beat the dead horse. I personally believe that this is an excellent example to give us enough time to at least start those conversations. And it might not happen. I might be wrong. It's not going to happen maybe in year one, maybe year two, but we need to start the conversations now. And then the second element, I guess, is there's sort of open question or debate about how overstaffed or how, I don't want to use the term bloated because that's horrible in so many ways, but how overstaffed central administration may or may not be. And at the end of the day, I do want to defer to the superintendent to make her managerial decisions as to what's going on. But I bemoan the fact that we are sort of in this difficult situation where, you know, if there isn't a path to an education stabilization fund, then we are stuck with the 314.5, right? And I'm wrestling with this tension of, I never want to approve a budget that exceeds the amount that we know we're going to have, especially with risk factors that already come into play. But I also have this tension of all these important things that have been articulated by our community. I think I also perhaps was not necessarily as clear as I should have been in the previous conversation. You know, I had a very difficult sort of heart-to-heart with myself. I went back, this is kind of silly, and I said, okay, what's a card that I sort of used when I went to go, you know, door to door, which is quite an experience, by the way. I got to say, I enjoyed that. And I look back, it's like, listen, I should orient myself against the fundamental things for which I campaigned on. Not that that's the only thing, but number one for me was academic excellence for all students. Other elements were also, you know, special education support, DI, like these things all matter. And I also feel this tension from extra perspectives because I have the honor of being the CPAC liaison as well, too, for our committee. So you never want to say you have to pick and choose amongst options, but I think I've heard and I agree with the argument that math is perhaps the strongest element that has the ability to positively touch as many students in our community as possible. And it's important to recognize it's not just for the kids who may be bored and need acceleration within our system and not leaving, which is another big issue that has been articulated and raised, but also for those roughly 30% of kids who haven't necessarily reached proficiency. Those MTS specialists are going to be critical to resolve that gap. I suspect the majority of us here probably subscribe to that same philosophy. So I think the math pathways is definitely a way to go forward. So for me, path A, not an option. Path B, path C, I don't know. That's the challenge that I have in my mind, right? I'm struggling with the cuts to the ABA, you know, role. But again, I'm happy that we have at least half of it covered for now. These are one-time issues. These are not recurring things. So my concern is that, again, we're going to be back here in 1 year's time doing the same conversation over and over again. I guess what I'll end with here is, you know, probably not a surprise to you, you know, Superintendent Nolan, my hope will be that whatever is ultimately decided, we put into either goals or a plan what ways we are going to address fundamental DEI questions. Maybe like, how do we keep a beyond representation event going if we have to make these kinds of cuts? How do we keep certain sustainability efforts going on? You know, nothing's going to be easy, but at least if we keep that as a conceptual priority, even if the individuals who would like to be there or individuals who could be there are not present, the message will stay important that we're telling community these things still matter, even if they're done by ways that we don't like. Last element I'll throw out there, even though I wasn't planning to address it, was school choice, right? From my perspective, at this juncture, I'm not in favor of school choice. I do want to think about it a little bit more before concluding on that, and it's primarily for two reasons. One, I actually agree with the mayor that there's a challenge with the 5,000 versus how much is being reimbursed. SPED costs, even though they're largely covered, I think somewhere around, was it 95 plus or minus, right, percent? There's still that 5% that's a gap. The bigger theoretical challenge that I have, and there are members of the community who actually articulate this to me, and I completely agree with them. It's hard to say because there's not data on this yet, but I am concerned that the people who select school choice are the people who are fundamentally disheartened with their existing schools. And oftentimes they may be people, for good reason, who come here because they seek our usually strong SPED services. But if we can't even support the kids who are already inside district with the SPED amount that we need, I worry that we are inviting a problem by going to school choice. Even though it might be within our control, I'm not sure whether the dollars are actually net positive in that dimension. It's something I need to research more, but I just want to elevate it as a potential trade-off that we're going to consider as we go forward with this. Thank you for listening.
Ben and then Jason.
Thank you. When I got here, I was going to say that I think Jason and I have run out of spreadsheets to search for more money. But we just received an invitation from the delegation, specifically Senator Cream, to ask for more. If anyone missed it tonight, we started at 5:30 because we like being here. And we had our delegation in to talk to us about what they're working on. I thought that was a fairly clear offer that she has the ability to get us some stuff. So I appreciate, Dr. Nolan, that you put the $200,000 sped earmark in. I know you don't love to do that because it's not year over year. It's not guaranteed that we can keep doing it. So budgeting off of it is probably going to create a challenge next year. But I think we've heard so much enthusiasm for the role that is at risk there, that to be able to put some money against that situation and we'll fight next year's fight next year, I think that makes a lot of sense. So thank you for hearing us on that. I think we do now have homework. We can resharpen our pencils and figure out what the set of asks is that we want to put in front of the delegation. And so Victor's question becomes right, which is what really is our timeline for action here? When do we need to get to totally done, and maybe do we have to get to contingent done or something in some nearer state? But we know that some of those earmarks just came through, and maybe there will be more that can come through in the course of April. That's one opportunity for revenue that just walked into the room tonight. I think the only other comment I want to make, to the extent we are starting to winnow our options, I agree, I think, with the direction the conversation is going. If you can pull up the Tranche 2 waterfall for me. I don't know if you have... So this is the trade-off for math. And when I look at this, I know we're taking on risk. This isn't free. We don't feel good about anything. This for math feels like a trade-off that I'm comfortable making, right? So, Victor, I think I agree with you. I agree with the mayor that to me, this puts option 2 ahead of option 1. We have heard consistently that our academics have fallen off from where they used to be. We've heard stories like students who had MTSS math in their elementary school benefited from it greatly, lost it at middle school, and saw their math fall off an achievement cliff. And that's sad and solvable. And this is what we're here to do, is to address that problem. This is core academics. This is the mission. So I am in favor of that option over the other option, but I do want to know what our timelines look like and whether we can see what kind of money is available from the state and try to work something else in here.
Can I just answer the question about timeline? The earmark that Representative Lon has noted he's going to provide is not done yet. It's part of the budget process. Unless I'm mistaken, Superintendent.
So I asked that very question, and he said that there's no opposition to its filing, so he feels confident that we can put it forward. But I thought you were going to say you have to give the city state of the city budget talk on the 27th. So the school committee budget has to be decided before.
Yes, and I'm certainly, you can make the decision on your comfort level that earmark is going to come in. I think it's a reasonable assumption, if there's no opposition, that it will. But in terms of other funding from our delegation, I would not, bluntly, this year I would not count on anything more. Maybe there's a small earmark of $50,000 here or there, but that's going to be about it. What I think is very appropriate on a going forward basis that you talked about is working with our delegation on things like the circuit breaker funding, which I think every single district has talked about, which would be a game changer for us if that was really upped and also very important. So I don't want to, I think it's great that our legislative delegation is so supportive. I don't want folks walking out of here with some false hope that in the next 2 months there's going to be additional funding.
May I ask a question? So if that does come to pass, Mayor Laredo, how will you handle existing additional funding? So for example, this last year, circuit breaker reimbursement did come through at $1 million higher than what we were given for our allocation last year. And that was complicated and you got stuck right in the middle of that. And you shored us right up. But I just want to know if we do become successful as a state with that reimbursement, and it results in additional funding, what would your plan be?
You know, my initial inclination would be just to be supportive and say, here it is, but I don't want to commit till I know exactly what that is, when it's going to come in, how much. There's just a lot of contingencies. But I think, Superintendent, I've been quite clear all along that circuit breaker money, it seems to me, belongs, as a general principle, belongs to the schools because it's meant to offset special education spending.
Thank you for saying that.
Okay, but again, I don't want to, please don't take a guarantee till I see the specifics, okay?
I know where to find you.
I think we should clarify that you are talking about Chapter 70 funding and not circuit breaker funding right now.
No, we're talking about circuit breaker.
Circuit breaker comes directly to us.
So
Chapter 70 is what goes to the city.
both issues have happened over the last few years where additional funding has happened either through Chapter 70 or circuit breaker, that there has been a withholding of those funds. So
You know, Superintendent, you and I have had multiple conversations about.
Trying to reassure the public, Mark, that we are.
You know, my belief is when state funding comes in that's meant for the school system, it should go to the school system. That's the general principle. I'll leave it at that. I think we're on the same page here.
Jason?
Thank you. First, some financial either clarifications or reactions. You know, Jonathan, I think it was important to distinguish, as much as each and every cut matters and counts, the difference in the sort of 2.8 million, the 1.0 for math, how much of that is cuts versus other creative opportunities the superintendents put before us that may bear risk in the future, but at least is keeping the tougher decisions more contained this year. I think that's really important. I think it's really important, as the superintendent and Alicia have in past, to acknowledge the big lift to true up the base to our economic costs. I think it's important to call the growth off of that trued up base 5.75. And in a way, calling it a bigger number makes the next year even scarier, right? Because we know what that growth this year, how tight we've been. We've just experienced the ramifications of that, not only in this meeting, but the prior. And so, you know, it's a tricky pro and con situation to have some visibility into thinking for future years, because on one hand, and we know the mechanics of Prop 2.5 plus 1% or so, to have something above that is assuring. And what's not reassuring is we don't know what's happening to important inflationary factors next year and the year beyond that. And so for those reasons, I'm hopeful for the future. I think there are reasons to be hopeful. I think there are investments in elementary MTSS that we're hopeful about. There are other areas that we can be hopeful about, and yet I understand why my colleagues are thinking about contingency plans around school choice and wanting to evaluate that in light of a sort of constrained pie and not perfect knowledge of the future. I personally do feel, as it relates to circuit breaker, that it is, I agree with the comments, complex financially, just not a values judgment, just a financial perspective. And it may be easier for certain cohorts to make financial sense, and at certain stages of schooling, like elementary, to make sense, and it may not in others, and we really need to examine that. So for that reason, I'm not supportive of rushing that decision. But yes, I do think we should look at it. I want to thank the community once again for it takes time, and it's tough to come out and make comments. And I think we did have very full inboxes. I did endeavor to read them. I know we all do that. And you know, one of the things I was thinking about when we were listening to that, and it came up in some of the comments, was a few of us had the experience of being part of the group to help develop the Thrive 2030 plan. A few others are in the audience. It was not an easy thing to, by committee of 50 people, define what is the Thrive 2030 strategic plan for our district. And we had a lot of these like conceptual debates and trade-offs. And you know, I think my takeaway, well, one of my key takeaways from that whole experience is that we as a community should, and I really want to emphasize and echo the superintendent's words on this, fundamentally reject the trade-off between excellence and values and some of the things that felt in conflict here together. It does not diminish the fact that there are budgetary trade-offs, but conceptually, in my opinion, we have to reject that. And so from that perspective, it doesn't make it easy when there are discrete things happening. But that last slide you put up, Superintendent, is just so important. I mean, it's on the website. I'm seeing it when we're having principal coffees, et cetera. I mean, we are a district, as many have said, who do now value diversity and equity and will always, and excellence, and student support, and well-being, and inclusion. We have to do all those things. So that means when there are tough trade-offs, we have to do our best. And so I do also applaud the fact that we're acknowledging the feedback and or being creative with the ABA role funding. I think that's important, especially if there are both support and financial implications of changes in that role. I second my colleague Victor's suggestion that I know it takes time to get the process right, but I think we should extend faith in our superintendent to keep the things on this page moving. But I do think it would be helpful to have that conversation with the community at the appropriate time once the process can work through, because I think there have been very important concerns, risks, feelings that these actions like raise in our community that we need to acknowledge and show that we're being responsive to. I personally, as I said in the last meeting, am very supportive of the Math Pathways program. I do agree with you, Ben, that the steps taken to make that a possibility are worth the results on that slide 6 that you pulled up a moment ago. And so as it relates to timing and pursuing other funding sources, you know, I defer to what we have to do there. I do think regardless of whether it's for this year right now or for future, we should definitely take those opportunities at their word and continue to pursue it. We need to look at all options.
Ariana?
Thank you, Madam Chair. I'll reiterate, thank you to the community who has filled our inboxes and showed up here tonight. I really take to heart, at least myself, of just hearing from everybody, trying to understand their perspectives. I'm going to beat the drum again of this carry forward and my anxiety for next year of what are we going to do. I think we do need to advance forward. I think putting math, getting the ball rolling there needs to happen. But I don't want us to be back here saying, all right, we need to cut 2 specialists for it. If we're going to make the investment, we have to do it. I'm going to take the mayor up really candidly on his offer to get started earlier because we have to deal with this carry forward. And it, from all accounts, at every turn, it seems like we're not going to deal with it this year. And we need to, because it's kind of this issue we've been just putting to the side, as Jonathan said earlier. But also we know what, in a sense, our allocation is going to be next year. And I am going to say it again. I've said it for 3 meetings. I think it's naive of us to not assume these inflationary rates are going to continue to go up. And I don't want us to be left with that $700,000 again. So just going to reiterate that, beat my drum again on it. I know you all have heard me say it, and I will continue to say it. Because there is a structural issue here. We've inherited this as a committee due to, unfortunately, previous administrations that have kind of constricted the school's budget. I think we are getting ourselves to right the ship in a sense. And I think with the institutional knowledge from the superintendent, from members like Tamika over here, who are reminding us of how things have kind of gotten to this point, has been super helpful for me at least. So with that, I'm just going to yell back, but I just want to beat my drum again on let's deal with this carry forward and the structural issues.
Thank you. I'd like to add a point about math because I think it sort of illustrates what you were saying, that when we as a community pit equity against excellence, we get into trouble. And I think this math program is actually such a great example of us not doing that. It is a program that serves all kids. So if you look at, we have 2,648 middle schoolers. Dr. Colby, thank you for the data. 5.2% of those students are Black. In the below benchmark categories, they are represented as 12.6%. Of our total middle schoolers, 11.2% identify as Latinx. In our below benchmark category in math, 20%. So we are disproportionately seeing our students of color in those below benchmark categories, and they need MTSS supports. We know that that works. And so in a time of constrained resources, I think we have to put our money where our outcomes are. And I think the Math Pathways program does that. And it also provides the support for the kids who want acceleration and all the enrichment stuff. So I want to throw that out for math. Superintendent and I have talked a little bit about when we get post-impact bargaining for any of the changes that are made, that we will come back to the committee with plans for the work that is part of any potential cut. So I want to put that out for the record here. We talked about that for the DEI role last time, but for all and any role that is cut where we are redistributing work or are concerned about vigilance on a plan, I think we should dive deep into those plans. That could be an early summer thing. That's all I have. Others comments for tonight? Tamika.
Just want to follow up a little bit on the Math Pathways and its ability to service the students who are disproportionately Black, Brown, in special ed, below benchmark students. I would agree with you that the Math Pathways is a way to address those needs if, and only if, there was a corresponding disproportionate allocation of the math interventionist time to service these most underserviced communities. I don't think I've heard that articulated as part of the strategy. And I also don't think I've heard articulated as part of the strategy the acknowledgement that we have different varying size middle schools. We have a day middle school that's what? Almost 1,000 kids. And then we have a Bigelow middle school that's, gosh, more than half that, less than half that. Can speak words, I'm getting tired. But how are we going to apportion those middle school interventionists in a way that the students at one school aren't getting disproportionately less time, service per week, per month, per whatever, than the kids at the smaller schools?
So we actually did account for that in our MTSS deployment at the elementary level, and it went like this. First, we made a base allocation to every school, and then there was a high needs allocation based on the first benchmarking cycle of that year with the new interventionist. So that is our plan for the next round. In addition, related to day specifically, we have identified that their needs in special education and for class sizes were also paramount. So if you notice, it was recommended that we actually reduce day by 2 classroom teachers. We did not. We kept it so that those classes could be smaller. We have a rising 7th grade that is pretty complex. So Jackie Mann has kept additional resources to be deployed towards special education to further reduce those caseloads. The other middle schools did not receive those. So MTSS, remember, there's the touchable thing we're calling Math MTSS, but it's all the whole ecosystem of support. So what Dr. Colby and Dr. Farag and now Dr. Roundtree and I will be doing is looking at where are those high need pockets after those first tranches of MTSS get moved forward. And we will do the same. I'll be back saying these are the schools that need to be the high impact places. Day would be a first priority based on our look right now. We do feel that we've beefed up their support and we added the bridge and reflections teachers additionally. So we feel like it's a good starting place. Is it sufficient? Probably not, but we're going to follow the data.
Appreciate that.
Yep.
All right. We on our calendar have a meeting on Monday, which is a move. We originally had it on Wednesday, so Monday, April 6th at 6:30. At that time, we have noticed for a potential vote, so there could be a vote. There is a motion at that time. Right, we're adjourned.
Thank you.
Three.